Chapter 1128, The Sudden Incident. Chapter 1128, The Sudden Incident. Inside the marsh, the group of warrior tried to reduce their auras and slow down their pace. They continued to move forward but moved more discreetly. Man was the leader. He frowned and electric beams shot out of his deep eyes as if he was trying to look further ahead of them. He looked careful. Mia and the Fernandez followed behind him. None of them looked impatient. They were all following Man's instructions. They all trusted him. Haig's news isn't wrong. Man stopped after sensing for a while. He looked at the lake far in front of them and said, "Many warriors used to gather there. They seemed to have struggled against each other for a while." Man picked up a pinch of mud under his feet, rubbed it between his fingers, and then looked at the trees around. Those people used to walk around the place. It seems that they had arranged something. Mia was astounded. She suddenly held her porcelain's white arm high. All the members of the Fernandez family halted and stood quietly at their spots. They were vigilant, watching their surroundings. "You means they could have perhaps arranged some restrictions?" asked Mia. Man nodded, pointing at the ground in front of them where there were a lot of thick bushes and lush trees. He answered firmly. "From some traces, those trees have been touched. They did it secretly. Fortunately, I've been familiar with this area for years. I can see their small streaks. It's strange." Mia was bewildered. Did they know that we would pass by this area? If not, why had they set up barriers and restrictions here? I'm not sure. It was also what Man couldn't reason. They didn't know that Yang was like Haig. His soul consciousness wasn't bound by the ancient continent. He could guess the location they had to cross with the direction they were going. That was why he had asked the others to prepare this area. Maybe it's not aimed at us. Perhaps they've prepared these things for Haig or Phelps. Anyway, no matter what, we have to be careful. Mia thought and then smiled. She turned to talk to Baihao's team of 4. "You guys go and scout first." Baihao's team darkened their face at the same time. They could listen to Mia and Man's conversation clearly. They knew that the muddy ground, the bushes, and even the small forest in front of them had a lot of dangers that could take their lives. As Mia was afraid that her family members would get hurt, she wanted the 4 of them to be sacrificing pawns, which enraged Baihao's team. However, they didn't dare to show that. Mia's team was so domineering. They had proven that, indeed. At the same time, before they came here, their chief had asked them to obey Mia's orders. Baihao could only reluctantly agree. "Everybody be careful. The area in front of us isn't safe." He was so tense. Abruptly, his mind became clear and cautious. He urged the god power and circulated it in his body. The other 3 warriors of the Bai family followed him. They urged and accumulated energy that then turned into the phantom of a fighting eagle and the python. They stood at their spots and sent the fantasy beasts to explore the area at a slow speed. Mia's icy eyes flashed with a gleam of heartless intention. She coldly looked at Baihao's group and then turned around to signal the members of the Fernandez family to back off a little further. Several hundred meters deep in the lake, Yang stood inside a transparent bubble, still clutching on Cecilia's arm like they were lovers without any distance. The atmosphere between them was ambiguously romantic. However, they both looked stern as if the battle was taking place right in front of them. "So," Cecilia exhaled, her breath as tender as the scent of the orchid. Her beautiful eyes were filled with anxiety and uneasy feeling. The god power in her body was streaming around continuously. It had synchronized to the different-sized bubbles around them. The explosive energy inside those bubbles was connected to her thought. She could trigger the bubbles at any time she wanted. Those bubbles were a kind of peculiar treasures. It could gather the steam in the lake or the ocean and compress them. When she triggered them, they would burst at the same time and create a terrifying energy wave. She had fabricated those things herself, so she understood very well how tremendous they could be. She had planned to use the instant destructive power of those bubbles to damage Mia's team severely. It would give her more chances to survive. She had also proposed and carried out this ambush plan. She didn't want to see any mistake that would make people doubt her talents. Thus, She was even more anxious. It isn't really going well. Shi Yang's face was cold and stern. He glanced at her and then closed his eyes. The flaming co-soul behind his back swayed and released the soul energy fluctuation. Cecilia was really nervous. She screamed, "What's happening?" "That man has mastered tracing skills. He seems to have found something. Mia's team has halted now. MIA has sent the Bai family's warriors to scout." Opening his eyes, Shi Yang knitted his brows. "Does man know how to track people? He can read signs and streaks and connect them to figure out information? Damn. We forgot this man." Cecilia regretted and said worriedly, "Throughout these 5 years, MIA and Phelps have depended on man's tracking skills to find us one by one. Although he doesn't have the power like the soul consciousness of the man who you've mentioned, man isn't an ordinary warrior. It seems like our plan won't go as we've estimated." Shi Yang rubbed his chin, light flashing in his brain as he contemplated. Mo Fu, Shuo Jiao, and Shong Ying, you had used a lot of precious weapons and efforts to arrange those restrictions and barriers. If they can't work, they will be very upset. I'm afraid that we don't have the chance to set up other traps. Cecilia furrowed her bold brows, her charming face filled with an anxious look. She was trying to formulate another plan. "Ah!" Shi Yang suddenly let out a low-pitched scream. "Wait a minute." While Baihao's team sent their beast phantoms to scout, they were walking towards the lake. MIA stopped them all of a sudden. Everybody was surprised. They looked at her without a clue. Baihao's face was more grimaced. He forced his temper down and gave her a bad face. "Lady MIA, what else do you want us to do?" MIA chuckled and waved her hand. "Don't rush. Haig said that the man in the lake can use space power Upanishad. Once you trigger the barriers and restrictions, he can leave immediately. We can't catch him then." From man's judgment, MIA gave an assumption that she thought was correct. She assumed that Shi Yang had set up those restrictions so he could do his business with Cecilia under the lake. When his restrictions were touched, he would be alerted immediately and he could use his space power Upanishad to flee. With such an assumption, MIA didn't want Baihao's team's activity to alert the others. She calmed down and said to man, "We should have a better plan. We should disorganize the space around here so he can't use his space power Upanishad to escape. We still have time to plan while he knows nothing about. It should be more than one solution." Man smiled sinisterly. "For example, we can stir up the earth and heaven energy here like a storm. It could create magnetic energy storms that shatter space. Another plan is..." Man contemplated and smiled coldly. He was giving plans to MIA while MIA earnestly listened to him with nods. At the bottom of the lake. How is it? Cecilia was about to crack from seeing Shi Yang's strange reaction. Her mesmerizing face was dark. "Something even worse." Shi Yang forced a smile. "You got it." "Ah." Cecilia covered her mouth and hissed. "They know we're under the lake. They also know our identities. They're going to stir up the space here so I can't use the space power Upanishad to run away." Squinting, he sensed and said, "Every space has critical points. When they are shattered or blocked, warriors who cultivate space power Upanishad can't use them to run away. They are trying to seal those critical nodes as they thought that I don't know what they are doing. After that, they can catch us like fish in a fish tank." Listening to him, Cecilia discolored and screamed, "If our plan can't work well, we don't need to stay here. We should go now." If all of your bubbles in this lake explode at the same time to create a blasting destruction, how many people can it kill?" asked Shi Yang all of a sudden. "Even if the first sky of incipient God Realm expert comes here, he will die." Cecilia was confident, but then she changed into a depressed mood right after that. "What's good with it now though? If we have to pay the big price that's our deaths, it isn't worth it. We should go before they finish that. If we linger, something bad will happen to us. Well, we can play a little bit." Shi Yang took a deep breath, his face grave. "They don't know how savage our outer barriers are and they also don't know the formation you've arranged here. They thought that the barriers we've set up are to alert us. How to play? If we fail and you can't take me out of here, isn't it different from dying under the lake?" Cecilia continued to shake her head, her face fearful. I think it's not worth our lives. Whether it's worth or not, I'll decide. You just need to listen to me. Shi Yang suddenly smiled and gripped Cecilia's arm, talking to her in a stiff voice. Don't worry. Even if they can confine the space, they can do it only in a small area. As long as we storm out, I can leave with you immediately. Cecilia paled. Looking at his cold face, she felt so chilled. She cursed him under her breath for his boldness. Shi Yang gripped her for a while and then released her. While Cecilia was confused, Shi Yang grinned. They've successfully finished. If you kill me now, you will die later. No doubt. And you will reveal your secret under this lake. I think you're not that stupid. Cecilia stared at him for a while, her beautiful face filled with reluctance. As the situation had come to this, she pulled herself together and rolled her eyes at Shi Yang. Forget it. I will play with you for a while. I hope we will survive. Don't worry. We will survive, said Shi Yang earnestly. Chapter 1129, Instant Kill. Chapter 1129, Instant Kill. Under the lake, transparent bubbles bobbed slowly. The bubble that was holding Shi Yang and Cecilia swayed and fell towards the bottom of the lake. It was heading to a rigid area that had a lot of dazzlingly sparkling crystals. However, they weren't free to enjoy the beautiful surroundings. All the barriers and attacks will be triggered at the area where Mo Fu hid the fiery earth mine. If the fiery earth mine doesn't explode, everything will be. The fiery earth mine will be activated by tremors, vibrations, or weight applied on the ground. As long as someone's walking or dropping something, they will be triggered instantly. I don't know many pieces of fiery earth mines Missouri Fu had installed. But if one of them explodes, the rest will explode altogether and will activate the restrictions set up by Shong Yingyu, Shuo Jiao, and Wu Feng. Instantly, the most furious restriction storms will burst off. Cecilia explained with a stern face. If we want to trick them, the first thing we must ensure is that the fiery earth mines won't go off before they come. Everything will be fine. Then, I will improve the energy in the ground around here. It will not make the fiery earth mines explode by weight and vibration. Shi Yang nodded. He stopped by the corner of the lake, placing the palm of his hand on the mud wall of the lake. Starlight sparkled as he sent his god power into the soil. Squinting, he used his soul consciousness to trace his energy, which slowly moved and extended underground. It created a layer of starlight that ordinary people couldn't observe when hiding several meters underground. He wasn't worried that Cecilia would attack him. MIA and Yu Man knew that they were in the lake. And he had sealed the place now. Without his power, Cecilia would never be able to escape MIA and the others' besiege. With this precondition, Cecilia wouldn't disturb him and she had to ensure his safety too. It happened as he had planned. Before Mia's team came, Cecilia could use her arrangement in this lake to bargain with Shi Yang. If she blocked Shi Yang or wounded him, she could run away easily and leave everything to Mia's team. That way, she could give Mo Fu and the others an explanation. She couldn't do that now, so she could only stay with Shi Yang and cooperate with him. The giant ape, the fighting eagle, the python, and the demonic dragons were beast phantoms that Bai Hao's group had created. They were patrolling the swamp. Although they were phantoms, they still had a certain weight and they could attract fires if any. However, when they walked around the lake, they didn't cause any commotion. Bai Hao's tense nerves were relaxed. He felt lucky that he had dodged a kalpa. Since those phantoms were connected directly with their souls, once they were affected, Bai Hao's team would also be damaged. Bai Hao was prepared to receive a big attack. And now, seeing that their phantoms were all right, he was actually surprised and happy. Perhaps, I thought too much. At this moment, even Yu Man started to doubt his presumptions. If they don't have a member who can recognize things like Hague, perhaps they were just lingering here for a while and they didn't set up any serious barriers and restrictions. The giant ape had come near the lake. If anything should happen, it would have happened already. MIA began to relax. She smiled and ordered Bai Hao, "You guys should go to the lake to check personally." She was still cautious. She was afraid that the phantoms couldn't check the area thoroughly, so she asked Bai Hao to go and check themselves. Baihao's group cursed her under their breath. However, they couldn't do anything but agree. They walked forward with a dark face, gingerly taking each step. It took them a while to reach the lake. Finally, they could exhale in relief. Yu-Man nodded and smiled. It shouldn't be any problem. We destroyed the control points of space around here. He can't escape anytime soon. Mia smiled happily. Her beautiful eyes sparkled. She spoke through her gritted teeth. This time, he must die. No doubt. She nodded to the warriors of the Fernandez family. Right after that, the warriors of the Fernandez family started to move under Yu-Man's and Mia's directions. They followed the trail that Baihao's group had taken. At a normal pace, they glided through the dangerous area and stood together with Baihao's team near the lake. Nothing happened. Everybody relaxed. They thought that they had just overthought. However, they didn't know that it was because someone had carefully prepared the earth-shaking danger in the center and it hadn't exploded yet. Right in the bottom of the lake. Yu-Man stood on the rock by the lake. He squinted and said in a cold voice, "They can't hide." Mia smiled and hesitated for a while. She talked to Baihao, forced them to come out. Mia, Yu-Man, and Baihao thought that Shiyang and Cecilia hadn't recognized that they had fallen into a deadly situation because they were busy with their romantic affair under the lake. Thinking like that, they felt relaxed. The four of Baihao's group glanced at each other. They nodded and sent their phantoms made of energy towards the lake and entered the lake. Here they come. When the giant ape, the fighting eagle, and the other two entered the lake, Cecilia hissed, her face sharp and savage. They're just shadows created by energy. They aren't worth our great explosion. We must make them use their real bodies. Shiyang was still calm. His god body moved inside the bubble and floated up to the surface. Looking at the four giant shadows slowly sinking, he grinned fiendishly. "Give it to me." "No. Give it to me." Cecilia smiled and stopped him. She said confidently, "We are underwater. This place is the critical area that I've set up. I've cultivated water power Upanishad. What do you say?" Shiyang was surprised. He stopped moving and just watched with interest. Cecilia's pinky finger of the left hand rattled like the snake tail. A magical wave rippled through her bubble, intriguing something in the lake. A human head-sized bubble floated up. The energy in it burst out instantly, which gathered billions of cubic meters of water in the lake and created an animated water dragon. The water dragon was several hundred meters long. It looked lean but powerful as it continued to draw the torrential steam. It attacked the giant ape and the fighting eagle immediately. The lake surged fiercely. The water dragon rolled with Cecilia's full power. The water also attacked the phantoms Baihao had created. Cecilia squinted, her eyes glowing in a cold halo. The energy in her body moved like a murmuring stream and sent splashes everywhere as she was gathering the power inside the bubbles in the lake to send to her water dragon temporarily. The water dragon suddenly had an endless power that could tear the phantoms created by Baihao's group. Standing by the lake, Baihao's group discolored. Their soul altars were damaged severely. "There's a B*TCH wreaking havoc there," Baihao shouted, his face ferocious. "Get there and kill her." As the four warriors of the Bai family were enraged, they jumped into the lake directly and didn't wait for Mia's order. They wanted to use the energy of their real bodies to strike Cecilia to death. "Ando, go help them." Mia frowned and pointed at a man. "You've cultivated fire power Upanishad. You burn and evaporate that water dragon and get their backs." An expert of the Fernandez family bowed to her and then jumped directly into the lake. Together with the four from Baihao's team, he drilled towards the bottom of the lake. "What should we do?" Cecilia's exposed skin looked like the water rippled. She looked like a woman made of flowing water. She now was beautiful in another marvelous way. Seeing Baihao's group of four and a warrior who cultivated fire power Upanishad, she hurried to ask for Shiyang's opinion. "Do you want to kill them? Once you attack them, the traps we've set up in the lake will be triggered. We can kill 5 or 6 people. But it won't be dangerous anymore. Tell me, what should we do?" 5 people. All are at third sky of ethereal god realm. So strong, indeed. Shi Yang squinted and considered. Cecilia, if you use your best power in this lake, how many warriors can you deal with? Without those barriers, I think I can deal with the expert from the God clan who cultivates fire power Upanishad. I guess I can gain the upper hand, but I won't be able to take care of more, Cecilia answered immediately. Oh, Shi Yang shook his head. He could only give up his thoughts. It seems like we can't stop them and attract more people to get into the lake. If it's so, we will attack curtly. You strike them right now. Okay. Cecilia's soft body released the tremendous energy fluctuations. She gave people a feeling of something deadly and dangerous. Bubbles rose from her eyes like the storm energy. Don't leave this bubble. Or else, you will be damaged too. While talking, the bubble they were staying inside lowered to the bottom of the lake and headed to a cave entrance, entering deep into the ground under the lake. While they entered deep into the ground under the lake, Cecilia continued to create a lot of hand seals. Wisps of soul consciousness were triggered. Her fingertips shot out rapid streams, soaring up to the surface of the lake above her head. The bubbles turned to the most furious energy storms. The crystal-clear lake was like a shattering mirror. It cracked strangely and then dissolved into many pieces while the water inside the lake exploded continuously. Even the mud wall of the lake was pressed until it burst off. The clear lake had turned into the most horrible hell in just a blink of an eye. Baihao's group of 4 and Ando of the God clan who cultivated fire power Upanishad hadn't recognized anything before their god bodies were dismembered. They burst and died. Even their soul altars were smashed and burned into ashes. The 5 warriors at third sky of ethereal god realm had perished both their souls and bodies without a scream. Even Mia's team by the lake was affected by the shockwaves. They were blown away. Many of them gushed out blood, staggering and trying to steady themselves. Behind them was also the area where there were dense barriers and restrictions that Shi Yang had activated. Chapter 1130, Use the Old Trick Again. Chapter 1130, Use the Old Trick Again. The lake had been quiet and clear a moment ago. Now, it was the purgatory on earth. It had swallowed Baihao's team and Ando, leaving nothing, not even a piece of bone. From the lake as the center, the surroundings looked like an image of the day of the apocalypse. Earth-shattering changes happened. Extremely destructive explosions arose from underground. Sharp spikes jutted from the ground. In the grumbling explosion, the ground shattered and also triggered more hidden restrictions. Many sharp spikes shot out, falling like rain. Those sharp spikes were gold and silver. They were smaller than the needles but much sharper. They could enter the god body or soul altar easily. Many warriors of the Fernandez family had many bleeding holes on their bodies. Sizzle. Sizzle. Strange noises echoed from the branches and leaves of the nearby trees. Significant bolts shot out, aimed at Mia and Yuman's team as if they had their own consciousness. The clouds of scorching fire emerged from the ground, floated up to the sky, and heavily pressed down above the Fernandez family's warriors. Dense sleet with icicles and bolts of lightning howled. Sharp spears jutted from the ground when the earth was splitting. All the restrictions were urged at the same time, giving the area around the lake the picture of the apocalypse. Mia, Yuman, and more than 10 warriors of the Fernandez family were so indignant. Almost all of them got hurt and had to use their god powers a lot. Their soul altars were also damaged in different levels. The restrictions that Mo Fu, Wu Feng, Sho Jiao, and Shong Yingyu had set up were really earth-shattering when they were activated. They were restrictions that they shouldn't be regretful of. Buzz, buzz, buzz. While the toxic insects were buzzing, a second sky of ethereal god realm warrior of the Fernandez family suddenly became dull and baffled. Mia's face was cold. She turned around to look at him. The flames of rage rolled in her heart. A grey cloud that looked like a shabby sheet of fabric fell on him. Under a melee of bolts of lightning, sharp spikes, and fire, he didn't notice that. He just used the light cage to protect his body. However, that grey, fabric-like thing was a cloud of tiny insects. Easily, those microscopic insects got through the light case and entered his head through his nostrils, eyes, ears, and mouths. Black blood oozed out of the 7 holes on that man's face, giving him a shocking look that cracked people's nerves and courage. Even MIA felt her scalp tingling. She was sure that his soul altar had been nibbled and destroyed. He didn't even have the hope to resurrect later. Buzz, buzz, buzz. More grey insects flew out of the cracks in the ground or the trees. They moved in masses like fabric sheets in the air. The warriors of the Fernandez family had to avoid them like they were running away from ghosts. Ah! Shrieks and extremely terrible screams arose. More members of the Fernandez family got trapped. The restrictions had damaged their god bodies or eroded their soul altars. Those warriors had to drain their energy quickly to resist. They felt like their mentalities were going to collapse at any minute. Until this moment, they were sure that Shang Yingyu and Cecilia had plotted this before. They were surely well prepared to counter them. "Secure our formation," MIA called coldly. She urged her god blood to transform to the god undying body. Standing like a perfect transparent piece of art in this chaotic ruin, her god power circulated in her body like a stream of water, giving her a mysterious beauty. The lake in front of her had gradually calmed down after that earth-shattering commotion. However, the clear lake was now a murky pond with dirty water, blood, and even pieces of human flesh blending in, which nauseated people. The auras of Bai Hao, Ando, and the others had vanished in the filthy water so fast that it shocked MIA. She stood baffled for a while as she felt that it was so inexplicable. After the soul and the body of an ethereal god realm expert had been shattered, he was dead for sure. Even the god clan didn't know how to resurrect this kind of dead warrior. However, at this high level, after they had fallen, the powerful energy and the soul in their bodies wouldn't return to earth and heaven in just a blink of an eye. There was some kind of last process that took time, perhaps several minutes. However, in Mia's conception, Ando, Bai Hao, and the others were killed in just a blink. Their auras had also dissolved at an unimaginably fast speed after their bodies and souls perished. MIA thought that it was so strange, but she didn't linger much. She assumed that Ando and Bai Hao had died. That was why they had disappeared shortly after. Of course, she didn't know that there was a man under that murky lake excitingly taking all the scattering energy. Inside the bubble, Shiyang stayed quiet as if he didn't know the horrible changes above his head or Cecilia get excited standing by him. He just stood still. Bai Hao, Ando, and the other three were experts at third sky of ethereal god realm. The essence chi scattered when they were killed instantly, and it was like wisps of smoke that the naked eye couldn't see. Shiyang's acupuncture points quickly took it in. He had even let the black hole in his soul alter out to swallow thousands of soul wisps. Cecilia was restless at her spot as she was proud of this ambush. However, she felt something when she looked at Shiyang. Usually, it was almost unrecognizable to ordinary people when Shiyang was taking in the essence chi. However, this time Cecilia stood too close to him. When she quieted down and sensed, she could feel the change of energy. Her beautiful face now had an awkward look when she eyed him suspiciously. The extremely turbulent restrictions bursting that had taken place above their heads wasn't finished yet. However, its power began to cease. The clear lake was now a muddy swamp. It didn't look fresh and beautiful anymore. Besides the 5 that died instantly in the lake, there were 3 killed by the restrictions out there. The other 9, including MIA, are wounded. Shiyang's eyes brightened. He suggested suddenly, "You get out first and try to control the situation for a while. I want to capture you, man." Try to control the situation? Cecilia winced. You cultivate water power Upanishad. You just need to emerge above this muddle bog. You just need to separate MIA and you, man, don't worry. I can capture you, man, really quickly. I won't let you fall into danger. Shiyang's face was ice cold, his voice chilled. Whatever you want me to help you with later, it costs your cooperation. I'm giving you an opportunity now. It's you who decides whether to take the chance or not. Cecilia was shaken. Her charming face became strong. Okay, deal. Because of the terrible explosion in the lake, all the restrictions there were gone. Cecilia urged her energy and swayed like a beautiful Nagini in the water, riding the current to travel to the murky surface. She emerged directly above the lake, which was now a pond of mud. She smiled sweetly, her face mocking MIA, "You, man, and the others who were still ducking the attacks. She said deliberately, "Well, my restrictions are interesting, right? We will slowly repay what you've treated us throughout the recent 5 years. It's just the beginning. More fun is awaiting you." This was a naked provocation. Mia's beautiful eyes became cold and sinister. She gazed at Cecilia, shouting indignantly, "Where is he? He has the guts to ambush us but not the balls to show himself. Well, when you guys were killed disgustingly, we were..." Cecilia's charming face blushed as she pretended to be embarrassed. "You know, right? Listening to your shrieks and screeches, you don't know how excited we were. Mwahahaha. Lowly B*tch. Mia was so angry that her body shivered. She couldn't help but shout, "Kill her! Kill her now! Kill that B*tch for me." All the fatal restrictions around them had completed their functions. The warriors of the Fernandez family were exhausted mentally and physically. Their souls and bodies were affected differently. They had to find something to vent out their anger on. Cecilia is what they needed now. Mia had ordered the members of the Fernandez family and made them burst out with murderous auras and bloodthirsty desires. They all stormed towards Cecilia. The brutally wild air currents rose like evil dragons. Cecilia changed her visage. She felt her power pressed by these air currents. She didn't think much and immediately went into the muddy lake. She gathered energy and sent twirling muddy tornadoes that swept through the area. "Watch out!" Mia shouted as she recalled something. Man rose his arm and made a gesture to ask people to halt. Electric beams from his fingertips stormed into the swamp. After a while, he told them, "The lake is safe." Hearing him, the Fernandez warriors didn't hesitate. Many ethereal extents were activated. Grand mountains stormed out and grumblingly pressed down on the muddy swamp. Instantaneously, strange powers of earth and sky were urged. Explosions reverberated in the lake again. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The terrifying hissing arose. 3 bone thorns appeared abruptly and assaulted Man. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The scorching flame created a sea of fire that snatched over Man. Flows of earth and heaven energy rolled fiercely. They spread and swarmed as if someone was controlling them. Also, they were pressing down on Man. A massive scorpion created by starlight twinkled in the horizon. It swung its tail and stormed towards Man. Yang urged his powers Upanishads without any hesitation. Space and star power Upanishads together with the heaven flame, the soul energy, and the co-soul had gathered emerged in just a blink. They all aimed at Man and left him no space or strength to resist. In fact, Man felt overwhelmed when many attacks were aimed at him at once. He didn't know what to do to defend. Boom! Just like the vast ocean pressing on him, Man's skeleton echoed of cracking sounds. His face was also deformed under the pressure, his energy chaotic. Yang appeared like a ghost right behind Man. Just like when he assaulted Phelps, he stabbed one thorn in Man's abdomen and another one in his heart. Looking at Mia coldly, Yang was nonchalant. "You know what I want." Chapter 1131, Achieve His Desire. Chapter 1131, Achieve His Desire. You know what I want. After capturing Man, Yang looked natural and calm. He quietly eyed Mia, a cold smile hanging on the corner of his mouth. As the Fernandez warriors were striking the muddy lake, they halted, their faces dark, cold, and indignant. All gazed at Yang. Rumble. A rapid current arose. Cecilia stood atop the water current. The fear on her face had vanished. She giggled and gently swayed her delicate waist as she descended by Yang. The Fernandez warriors didn't dare to act rashly, their complexion begrudging. Mia's exquisite face twisted. Cold resentment sparkled in her eyes. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. She gestured to the other members of the Fernandez family. Everybody quieted down, scattering as they saw her gesture. Instantly, they circled Yang and Cecilia in layers. "Lady Mia, don't mind whether I die or not. Please kill him." Man's eyes were distressed and sorrowful. His abdomen was bleeding, but he didn't look fearful. he said calmly. He's much more dangerous than anybody else. If he's alive, he will affect the great plan of our clan. Yu Man could feel the significant risk from Shiyang. When the 3 bone thorns appeared, he had been cautious enough to gather the energy of his body. However, the fierce attacks from Shiyang's formidable 3 powers had struck him. He couldn't bear that, and Shiyang got him in the end. When the bone thorn stabbed into his soft abdomen, Yu Man felt so cold. He was frightened. He began to observe Shiyang's power. He figured out that Shiyang was a time bomb and he didn't know when it would explode in this swamp. He was so intimidating with space power, Upanishad, and tremendous competence. He now understood Phelps's feelings at that time. He knew that it wasn't because Phelps was useless. His opponent was too strong. I don't know what you want. Can you make it a little clearer? Mia didn't look at Yu Man or listen to him. She just glared at Shiyang while thoughts rolled in her head as she thought about how to deal with this tough challenge. Swoosh. The bone thorn stabbing in Yu Man stirred from time to time. Blood splashed from the cut, dyeing the grass in front of him blood red. Yu Man's face winced in horrible pain. He clenched his jaw, trying to endure and not to scream. However, the elegant features of his middle-aged face had gone. He looked ashen now. Evidently, his wound was really terrible. Shiyang looked deliberate even though he was busy. He studied Mia, his face wearing a cold smile. I know that the God Clan has an amazing self-recovery ability. You can heal your wounds fast, but the pain is something you can never control, right? Can you feel the pain? He grinned. Another bone thorn appeared. He grabbed it and thrust it into Yu Man's leg and then slowly moved it all together with the other 2. Yu Man couldn't endure it anymore. He cried crazily and crouched. His leg now had a bleeding cut that was deep to his bone that made people jolted up when they saw it. Many warriors of the Fernandez family felt chilled. They were scared as if they had to endure such terrifying torment. Some didn't even dare to watch. They turned away as they didn't want to see Yu Man wailing in pain. PFFFT. Blood splashed. Some drops of blood splattered on Cecilia's clothes, creating the crimson flowers. Cecilia looked at it in disgust. She hurried to step backward and stood behind Shiyang. Now, she had to look at Shiyang with a complicated complexion. Too sinister and savage, indeed. Cecilia screamed inwardly. She had made up her mind. If she had to fight Shiyang, she would rather let him kill her instantly than fall into his hands. This man didn't seem to have human emotions. Wait. I'll hand it to you. Mia gritted her white teeth. Colors faded in her exquisite face. She didn't want to linger and let Yu Man suffer from more torture. She touched a green ring on her finger. A shining light flashed. A beautiful crystal emerged with a peculiar smiling woman flower inside. The crystal floated and flew towards Shiyang slowly, releasing the demonic aura. People could feel its powerful energy. Cecilia's pretty eyes brightened. She eyed the 7-colored demonic flower and squinted to sense. Before the flower had arrived, she said, "This flower is real. The aura is just right and the energy fluctuation matches. It should be real. I won't joke about this on my Uncle Yu Man's life." Mia hissed coldly. "Hurry and release him." Shiyang rose his hand and waved, using his energy to drive the crystal and putting it into his fantasy sky ring. Then, he grinned. "Wait for a moment. We must get out of this area first. If we linger, you will kill us immediately, won't you?" The deaths and wounds that Mia and the Fernandez family's warriors had to bear came from the restrictions and the secret treasures that Mo Feng, Shuo Jiao, Wu Feng, and Shong Yingyu had left. Although they weren't related directly to him, he knew how dominant Mia's team was. He knew that when Mia alone troubled him, he wouldn't have a chance to run away. At the same time, Cecilia wasn't strong enough to deal with the other warriors. If they were besieged, Cecilia and Shiyang wouldn't be able to escape quickly, which only left them with the road of death. Mia didn't say more. With a dark face, she waved at her warriors. Those people knew what to do. They proactively stepped aside to give way to Shiyang and Cecilia. Shiyang was still holding Yu Man. Under the murderous look of Mia's team, they walked out of the area at a normal pace. After Shi Yang found that the space nodes outside were normal, he nodded to Cecilia. Cecilia came close to him and hooked her left hand on his elbow. She was smiling and being happy. Hey Mia, we have to go now. I'm looking forward to meeting you guys again, teased Cecilia. You will all die. I'm sure you will all die, snarled Mia coldly. Shi Yang halted, but he didn't release Man. He just furrowed his brows at Mia. I want to ask you one thing. Has the Fernandez family joined hands with the Ascot family to invade Agate Star area? Mia startled. She nodded without much concern. Yeah, it's true. Plus the Bai family. We've joined hands to swallow Agate Star area. We've already discussed the shares. The Ascot family will lead this operation. The Bai family will just cooperate with the Ascot family. What does it matter to you? She got it when she saw the change of Shi Yang's countenance. You're from Agate Star area? The Bai family, the Ascot family, the Fernandez family. Good then. Shi Yang muttered and grinned fiendishly at Mia. I will eat you up. I will eat the people of these three families, one by one on this ancient continent. I will make your three forces bury your bodies in this ancient continent. First, I will take a small price from your warriors. Crack. Crack. Man's skeleton was broken, his vein exploded directly. Blood gushed out from his body while his old face winced in a pain of the cutting flesh torment. Here, take your warrior. Shi Yang grinned, it's no problem for him to recover fully later. I know how strong your god undying body is. It will just take him some time. He will be alive in the end. It's not against what I've agreed to you. Help yourself. Shi Yang let off Man. The man sagged down like a puddle on the ground. Shi Yang took Cecilia jumping into a space slit he had torn behind them. They disappeared shortly after. I will kill you. I swear I will kill you. Mia shouted like crazy. She dashed to Man looking at his shattered body. She didn't hesitate to take out many fragranced aromas and crystal pellets in her fantasy sky ring. She shoved them into Man's mouth and urged him, stay with us. Uncle Man, you must resist it. Dissolve the medicinal efficacy of those pellets to recover quickly. Man had a lot of blood on his face. He even had bubbles of blood on the corners of his mouth. He looked terrible and seemed to be dying. While Mia was crying and encouraging him, he strenuously urged his energy to circulate and absorb the pellets. The survivors of the Fernandez family gritted their teeth indignantly while looking at Man. They looked darkly sinister at this moment. They vowed to stab Shi Yang thousands of times so he wouldn't have a decent death. Splash! Shi Yang and Cecilia fell into a pond, which was really far from Man and Mia. They couldn't come here in just a short time. Cecilia still gripped Shi Yang's arm, which made her generous breasts stuck on his arm. This warm weight would have made people's blood boil. Her beautiful thighs moved for a while and she emerged from the pond. Looking at Shi Yang, she smiled charmingly. Good brother, I've helped you get what you want. Shouldn't you agree with me to help me get what I want? Her beautiful face wore a tender smile, her eyes filled with hope. Let's talk about it later. Shi Yang coldly sprang from her grip. He frowned. Mia's core team is still here. Phelps's team is also all right. The newcomers are even stronger. I'm not sure if we can survive in the swamp until the center opens or not. Even if we talk more, it's just talking about things in vain. It's a waste of time and effort. Cecilia discolored. She eyed Shi Yang for a while and couldn't help but curse this bastard for his harshness. But she couldn't do anything to him. Where's Mo Feng's group? Shouldn't we gather with them now? She pondered for a while and tried to press down her anger. You can leave first. I want to cultivate for a while. I don't like you staying and disturbing me. Shi Yang talked indifferently. Pointing in a direction, he said deliberately, go this way. After 1 hour, you will see Mo Feng's team. Cecilia felt chilled. She looked skeptical in the direction he had just pointed out. She said unnaturally, I should go with you. I can guard you when you cultivate. Haven't I made it clear? When I cultivate, I don't want people to bother me, frowned Shi Yang. Cecilia was so angry. She gently regarded the 18 generations of Shi Yang's family. With a gingerly face, she watched her surroundings along her way as she was afraid that Shi Yang had shown her the way to death. Chapter 1132. Who is the backbone? Chapter 1132. Who is the backbone? As soon as Cecilia left, Shi Yang glided around the place to set up some small restrictions. Right after that, he found a lush, ancient tree and went inside the tree. Closing his eyes, he circulated his energy and adjusted the energy in his acupuncture points, making himself sober. Shi Yang had taken in the essence chi of Ando, who was part of Bai Hao's team, killed and was in the lake, and the warriors of the Fernandez family who were killed by the restrictions of Mo Fu, Shuo Jiao, Shong Yingyu. He was filtering and refining that kind of energy in his acupuncture points. This flow of essence chi was too abundant to him. During the filtering process, it was going to put him into the chaotic mental state. Of course, he wouldn't let Cecilia watch it. After he had refined the brilliant starfruit tree to break through to second sky of ethereal god realm, the essence chi ancient tree in his body had grown tremendously, increasing the amount of room to store more god power. The essence chi from Ando, Bai Hao, and the others were enough to satisfy him. They had filled his essence chi ancient tree, which made his god power brimming and refined. Perhaps he could reach the upper limit of his second sky of ethereal god realm. It also facilitated him to put more effort in understanding Power's Upanishad. Inside the big tree, he quieted down and waited for the energy in his body to be refined. Inside a small forest with grass reaching their waist, Mo Fu, Shuo Jiao, the Wu brothers, Shong Yingyu, and Jiao Shan were scattering and creating a vague circle. They were using the divine crystals to refill energy. They also knew the free time they got to rest was precious because they might not have free time to recover when another big war consumed them. Perhaps they had to fight until they died. Thus, as soon as they got time, they had to recover their energy first, so they could be in their best condition all the time to resist the possible dangers. It was because they were cautious that they could live longer than the others who were killed already. Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and Shong Yingyu had recovered first. The divine crystals in their hands exploded and turned into chips of rock that scattered. Wu Feng frowned and looked at Shong Yingyu. What kind of man is that guy? Mo Fu also looked at Shi Yang, his face solemn. His presence matters to our lives, all of us. We want to know more about him. Please give us the details. As Shi Yang's soul consciousness wasn't shackled by the ancient continent, he could be their eyes to help them locate the enemies or escape the besiege. His role was crucial, indeed. Strictly speaking, their lives were dependent on Shi Yang. If Shi Yang wanted to trick them, Phelps's and Mia's teams could find them and kill them quickly. Mo Fu and Wu Feng were the leaders of their families. They didn't like the feeling of being dependent on someone else. They were also afraid that Shi Yang's wrong assumption would lead them to a fatal consequence. Thus, they were all cautious. I don't actually know him. Shong Yingyu's clear and cold eyes twinkled, her long eyelashes batting. He got the guiding fruit from my father. Because of this, I hated him a lot before we got to the ancient continent. Shong Yingyu merely narrated how she met Shi Yang. Pausing for a while, she added, "That man is cruel and heartless. He only cares about himself. He won't bat an eye on people's lives. In other words, if we are no help to him in resisting the God clan and if he can escape without counting on us, he will not care about our life." Mo Fu and Wu Feng changed their visage. Someone is coming. Shuo Jiao stood up, the dark green light in his eyes rippling. He seemed to use the toxic insects to sense something. A moment later, Shuo Jiao exhaled and said, "It's Cecilia." People relaxed. However, right after that, they changed their faces as they suddenly remembered something. Mo Fu screamed, "Where's Shi Yang? Did you sense him?" Shuo Jiao shook his head, his face complicated. "No. Only Cecilia." The warriors who were sitting to cultivate all jolted up, their faces grimaced. "What's good if Cecilia can come back? If he isn't here, we are blind. How can we resist the God clan?" Wu Feng said gloomily and coldly. They all nodded in agreement. In their mind, Shi Yang's life was much important than Cecilia's. Something unexpected happened to him, asked a warrior. People's faces darkened. Mofu snorted and said coldly, Cecilia is really trash. She can come back and she didn't bring him with her. People nodded again. Who said I'm just trash? Right at this moment, Cecilia's voice came. Her face was frosty as she scanned through them. They were all studying her with cold eyes. Cecilia felt so indignant. She couldn't help but cry. Don't you feel shameful? While I risked my life with Mia's team, you guys were staying here and recovering your powers in peace. I'm back and I have to endure your mocking. Where's Shiyang? Where is he? Why did he not come back with you? Is it because of you that he got hurt or something unexpected happened? No one minded Cecilia's rage. They just wanted to know where Shiyang was. They wanted to confirm his status first. Cecilia looked at each of them and felt so helpless. She now recognized that she had no means to compete with Shiyang. She had nothing to bargain with him like he had mentioned. If Shiyang wanted her to die, he didn't need to do that himself. He just needed to tell Mo Fu and Wu Feng. She immediately felt dispirited. She didn't nag more. He's all right. He just wanted to cultivate alone for a while. He said he would catch up with us later. Hearing her, people exhaled in relief. Their tense nerves were relaxed. Then, they asked to know if she was okay. They clamorously asked her what had happened and whether or not their restrictions had worked. They wanted to know if their death traps had damaged Mia's team badly. The 4 warriors of the Bai family were dead. I gave them an instant kill in the lake together with a warrior of the Fernandez family who cultivated fire power Upanishad at third sky of ethereal god realm, said Cecilia arrogantly. Everybody was astounded. Shong Yingyu was so excited. She balled her fists, her soft body shivering. She had a deep grudge against Bai Hao's team. She always wanted to eliminate the Bai warriors. As she heard that the 4 warriors of the Bai family were killed, she couldn't hide her joy. The dark cloud in her mind was also swept away. The restrictions you guys set up had damaged all of them. It seems like 3 or 4 were killed. Mia's team had a significant loss this time, continued Cecilia. People grinned and laughed. They cheered happily. Throughout 5 years, they had been running helter-skelter all the time. They had been in a bad situation and had never given Phelps and MIA any damage. To them, this was a rare triumph that gave them a gentle pat of encouragement on their shoulder. Well, Shiyang had especially captured Yu Man to ask for the 7-colored demonic flower from MIA. He had wounded Yu Man severely too, Cecilia smiled and added. Awesome. He could use the old trick again. Excellent. How could he capture the key person every time? Psychopath. Everybody praised this battle. They were so excited as if they had won this battle personally. Cecilia made a forced smile. She understood that only Shiyang was important in this event and that only he would be able to guide people to the exit alive. No matter how significant her merit was, no one had ever noticed. In other words, she couldn't be like Shiyang and become their eye. Thus, she couldn't get such treatment. Until this moment, Cecilia had woken up. If she got Shiyang's support in this team, she could do anything she wanted on this team. It wouldn't be hard, though. She pondered, and strange light glowing in her eyes. She seemed to have new ideas. The ground had many holes and the lake was turbid. Mia's team was watching Yu Man carefully. Yu Man had swallowed a large number of pellets. After a long time to digest them, his breathing had been steadied. The open wounds in his body were closed. He was sound asleep now. At this speed, Yu Man's body was secure. If he didn't need to work strenuously for the next several years, he wouldn't bear any adverse consequence. Mia exhaled in relief. She took out the divine crystals to recover her energy. The other warriors of the Fernandez family also sat by Yu Man to refill energy. After an unknown time, Mia opened her eyes and gave a snort. Shadows emerged from a further distance. Haig and Phelps were approaching. They looked at her with an odd countenance. Observing the surroundings, their faces were getting solemn. Phelps looked at Yu Man and some headstones far from them. He grinned coldly, his face showing a gleam of satisfaction. Haig snorted. Phelps shut his smile, his face scared. He didn't keep that mocking countenance and became more cautious. What happened? Haig frowned and looked at MIA. I felt the energy of a fierce battle here. The energy surged terribly. There were just two of them and they could give you a lot of damages like this. They'd arranged everything. They had set up a lot of restrictions and mines here. MIA bit her lower lips and stared at Haig. Your news wasn't wrong. That brat stayed in the lake with a woman. But you didn't tell us they had installed the restrictions. Haig was surprised and said awkwardly, I don't have much energy to watch them in every second. But there were just two of them. Couldn't you finish them? He cultivates space power Upanishad. MIA reminded him in a cold voice. If he wanted to leave, we wouldn't be able to hold him down. In short, he's adamant to deal with. Haig frowned and shook his head. It shouldn't be like that. Chapter 1133, Predestined Mortal Enemy. Chapter 1133, Predestined Mortal Enemy. Before you got there, didn't you seal the space first? MIA, you are not acting consistently. You would never be that reckless. I know you well. Haig looked at her and you man who was as pale as a sheet of white paper. What happened after all? He kept you man hostage. MIA sighed all of a sudden. He has only second sky of ethereal god realm, but he could approach you man in just a blink of an eye. He had suppressed you man's god power and captured him. I couldn't accept that fact, either. Hearing the word hostage, Phelps grimaced. He snorted and then said, that man is wicked. He seems to be able to summon the earth and heaven energy in this area. It's hard to prevent it though. I was beaten because of this. He could urge earth and heaven energy in this place. Haig's voice went sharper. Instantly, his face became odd and dark like an icy sword stabbing Phelps. Tell me in detail. Phelps and MIA were frightened. I told you to clarify. Haig had a gleam of brutality in between his two brows. His voice was so chilled that it could even freeze people's bones. He can use the earth and heaven energy here. I'm sure about that. Phelps hurried to speak. I was pressed by the earth and heaven energy and I almost suffocated. What was attacked the same way? It's true. Phelps blabbered. He was filled with suspicion since he didn't know why Haig suddenly cared about this. However, he didn't dare to go against Haig. Haig was the future heir of the Bradley family. He was appointed. Many elders of the God clan had approved him. They all agreed and treated him as the future leader of the God clan. Whether it was his state or position, he was much stronger than Phelps. Thus, Phelps knew what to do. Our young master told the truth. That man can summon earth and heaven energy. When I came to rescue my young master, I was bounced back by the earth and heaven energy. I'm sure it's completely true, Watt also said. Haig fell in silence. Peyton stood by him, looking absorbed in his thoughts. He seemed to guess something. His face changed as he was startled. He whispered, Young master, is it possible? MIA and Phelps were puzzled. They looked at Haig and guessed inwardly the reason why he became that odd. They knew that Haig rarely became anxious or restless. He was always placid and harsh. He would never be frightened by something trivial. They contemplated and recognized that Haig had figured something out. They became even more curious. I'm not sure, but it's possible. Haig looked at the terrible ground and frowned. He continued coldly, if they could set up the ambush that was activated when you guys arrived, it wouldn't be just a coincidence. MIA looked at him in surprise. What do you mean? Does he use the flaming power? Haig asked instead of giving an answer. Yes. A member of the Fernandez family screamed immediately. When he attacked you man, I saw clearly that he used a fire sea and covered you man directly. Haig discolored slightly. He was more certain with what he had in his mind. He nodded and said, I have an assumption. Phelps, MIA, Watt, and the others focused on Haig, waiting to hear his assumption. They were all stern as they knew what Haig was about to tell them that was really critical. He's like me. His soul consciousness isn't bound in this place. He can see the tiny commotion in the swamp. Haig looked at MIA and took a deep breath. He said, he must have known your direction and route. He had predicted and installed the restriction to give you a terrible ambush. Phelps, MIA, and the others changed their visages dramatically. They couldn't believe what Haig had told them and just watched him in astonishment. They knew what it meant. Haig was the heir of the Bradley family, and he had the origin of the ancient god star, the ancestral planet of the God clan. With the favor from God, he decided to use Desolate as the bait to eliminate the talented seeds of the other star areas. He wanted to catch all of them by throwing one net. The reasons why Haig was so confident were because of the intimidation of the God clan and his advantages in the ancient continent. Only the warriors with the origin of the ancient continent wouldn't be bound on Desolate. They could precisely locate the enemies and gather the thick earth and heaven energy. This kind of warrior in the ancient continent was the existence that went against natural orders. Haig thought that the heaven had favored only him. MIA and Phelps thought the same. Now, they knew that it wasn't like that. They couldn't help but feel heavy-hearted. Haig, are you sure? If that man has such superpowers like you, will your plan succeed in the end? Asked Phelps worriedly. Haig's face was dark and cold. He said, well, let's check it out. Then, he sat down cross-legged and touched his glabella. A shining silver flame flew out of his pupils, spinning, which was pretty similar to Shi Yang's co-soul. Haig urged his power Upanishad right in front of everybody. He released his soul consciousness, extending rapidly. Life energy fluctuations in the areas where his soul consciousness passed would be reflected in his mind. He seemed to have thousands of eyes that helped him observe the swamp. It searched every tiny corner and didn't miss a life. Phelps, MIA, Watt, Peyton, and the members of the God clan all wore heavy countenances while looking at Haig and waiting quietly. After a while, Haig's eyes brightened. In a very far distance, Shi Yang was sitting cross-legged on a rock, his face ferocious while murderous aura soared up into the sky. His eyes were filled with brutal, wild, bloodthirsty, and sinister intents. He was like a roaring beast showing its powers and domineering aura. Flows of negative emotions flooded his heart, puzzling his consciousness. His soul gradually entered a manic state that left him with only negative and murderous thoughts. However, the co-soul floating behind his back was like a flame and it wasn't affected by his host soul. An icy aura emitted from the poison-dipped cold bead in his ethereal extent. It felt like a bucket of cold water was poured on the head on a scorching summer day. Shi Yang's hot-tempered state was cooled down quickly. Shi Yang suddenly felt like someone was peeping on him. He opened his eyes, his indifferent look gazing on the horizon. A wisp of soul consciousness shot out. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Lightning flowers exploded above his head up in the sky as if two lightning bolts had collided and released fierce soul consciousness fluctuations. His body shook for a while. A drilling pain shot in his brain when his wisp of soul consciousness with space power was smashed. It also hurt his soul. Lifting his head looking at the nothingness, Shi Yang's face became so stern. Flows of soul consciousness were condensed as sharp as needles. They directly stabbed the sky above his head. Boom, boom. Beams of lightning appeared inside the clouds. Lightning strikes flashed and crushed all grey clouds. Shi Yang had released his flows of soul consciousness to strike the same sharp needles or spears hiding in the clouds. They both shattered at that moment. His soul altar shivered for a while when his sea of consciousness was stirred up and his ethereal extent felt like it got stabbed. All gave him head-splitting pain. It was a battle between souls. I am Haig. A cold wisp of soul consciousness appeared above his head. I know where you are. I'll find you and kill you. Wait for me. Mwahahaha. Shi Yang's face became dark, malicious, and he grimaced. He lifted his head to look at the sky, but he still sat quietly. Shi Yang was startled. A smile of awe appeared on his face. After a while, beams of pure energy circulating in his acupuncture points fiercely overflowed his essence chi ancient tree. His power was boosted immediately. The strange aura that had appeared above his head vanished. On the other side, Haig's body had shaken several times. He suddenly gave a sinister smile. Phelps, MIA, and Peyton were waiting for his response. They all felt a little anxious. We're correct. He's like me. We both have the origin of the ancient continent. Haig sounded excited. Marvelous. Excellent. He's like me. He isn't shackled by Desolate's restriction. He can also mobilize earth and heaven energy. He has fused with the origin. Interesting. Too good for me. His face resumed a stern appearance as he talked in a low-pitched voice. I will kill him and take his origin. I will use him to complete me. He will be my biggest harvest on this trip. Haha, no one can rival me. This is my destiny. Phelps, MIA, and the others were shocked. They gasped. There are a lot of strange things in this vast universe, indeed. Someone like you has the origin of the ancient continent. And you are about to meet him in Desolate. Perhaps it's predestined in the unseen world that you guys need to fight to see who will win, said MIA deliberately. Do you think he can beat me? Grinned Haig. MIA and Phelps contemplated. They nodded in agreement and then spoke in unison. Indeed, he can't resist you. Watt and Peyton also smiled. In their eyes, Shi Yang, the warrior Haig had laid his eyes on, was already dead. I want this person's life. Haig pondered for a while and then spoke to MIA and Phelps. If you guys are well rested, we should depart now. I can't wait longer. From now on, we can't relax because Shi Yang also knows our whereabouts. We know what to do, Phelps nodded. Then, we should move now, Haig decided. The warriors of the three great families including the Bradleys, the Fernandez, and the Ascotts became busy after receiving his orders. They headed to the area he had pointed out. Chapter 1134, Great Responsibility. Chapter 1134, Great Responsibility. Shi Yang stood up. Lifting his head to look at the empty horizon, he closed his eyes to sense for a while. Taking a deep breath, he dashed towards the area where Mo Fu, Shong Yingyu, and the others were gathering. The essence chi of Baihao's group and Ando was filtered and refined. All were poured into his essence chi ancient tree. After this kind of energy was treated, it could bring him massive benefits. However, it wasn't enough to fill his essence chi ancient tree to the upper limit of second sky of ethereal god realm. After entering the new realm, he had recognized that the realm required doubled the amount of energy and understanding of the realm. There wasn't even 1/10 of the essence chi of Baihao's team and Ando after being filtered and refined. The production loss of this refining process was extremely astonishing. The amount given couldn't make him reach the peak of his second sky of ethereal god realm yet. While dashing fast, Shi Yang's face was heavy as he furrowed his brows. The godman called Haig made him feel threatened. Just like him, this man wasn't bound on this ancient continent. He could also use the immense energy of earth and heaven on this planet. And his realm was one level higher than Shi Yang's. He was at the peak of third sky of ethereal god realm. He tried to sense for a while and found that the intensity of Haig's body energy had surpassed the warrior at the ordinary first sky of incipient god realm. He seemed to have more secret energy fluctuations. This man had a profound realm assisted by tremendous energy accumulation. He could transform to the god undying body too. From any aspect, this man wasn't very different from Shi Yang. He made Shi Yang feel insecure and he was his mortal enemy. At the same time, MIA and Phelps had to listen to Haig in this ancient continent, giving him absolute advantages. Haig's arrogant laughter still lingered in his ears and made Shi Yang grimace. He could clearly feel that the three forces of Haig, Phelps, and MIA had diverged. Like three currents of a flood, they were heading towards Shi Yang and Mo Fu's team, forming besiegers to block them. It made Shi Yang more restlessly anxious. Swish! Gliding like a lightning strike above the swamp, Shi Yang suddenly appeared in front of Mo Fu, Shong Yingyu, and Cecilia. Mo Fu and the others were running away. Seeing him, they were all happy, smiling and appraising him for the excellent play. Awesome! We cost Mia's team a big price this time. We've been fighting them for a long time in the swamp but we have never caused them such a big loss. Is it true that you can capture people that easily? Phelps couldn't dodge you and even you man at third sky of ethereal god realm couldn't. So if you want, you can subdue MIA, right? With you on our side, we can make it to the day when the center will be unsealed. I'm suddenly confident now. Mo Fu, Wu Feng, Jiao Shan, and the others were so excited as if they had won the battle themselves. Seeing him arrive, they started to clamor. Even Shang Yingyu now had a rare weak smile on her face. She was happy, indeed. She thought that it was Shi Yang's merit to kill the Bai family's soldiers. She assumed that Cecilia was just his assistant and that she wasn't really useful. Their praising stopped shortly after because they all saw his weird face. Since he had arrived, he had put on a dark, frowning face. What happened? Cecilia was calm as she asked, "You don't look cheered up at all. You have the 7-colored demonic flower. You've cultivated 2. You've damaged Mia's team badly. What makes you uncomfortable?" The others were also confused. "Do you know a guy named Haig?" He suddenly asked as he thought that Mo Fu, Cecilia, Wu Feng were the outstanding talents of the big star areas, so they had to be familiar with those domineering future leaders of the God clan. They must know this strong expert. Indeed, when he said that name, everybody quieted down, their faces getting stern. "Why did you mention him all of a sudden?" asked Mo Fu, his face unnatural. "I used to tell you guys that the new force entering the swamp has a man like me. He isn't bound by the ancient continent. His soul consciousness can sense the little commotions and he can gather earth and heaven energy." Pausing for a while, he said seriously, "Today, I've confirmed that Haig is that person." Everybody wore a dark face. Their eyes seemed to be covered by a layer of a dark cloud. Cecilia explained, "I should have guessed that it was him early on. He's the heir of the Bradley family, the biggest family of the God clan. He's the leader appointed by the elders of the God clan. He's the brightest star of the new generation." As Cecilia was talking, people became heavy-hearted. They felt like they had a heavy rock placing on their chests that suffocated them. Looking at the fear on Mo Fu's face, the stern visage of Wu Feng, and the restless appearance of the others, Shi Yang changed his face slightly. Without further explanation, he knew how intimidating Haig was. Haig isn't like most of the other young members of the God clan. This man is calm, heartless, and really smart. His fighting experiences are various, though. Cecilia rubbed her temples as if she had a headache. The Bradley family had exiled him to the most chaotic and dangerous star area where he had to seek for life in perilous situations. He had created miracles and great benefits for the Bradley family. Not only does he have a domineering personal competence, he was also good at commanding legions. He prioritizes benefits over anything else. He doesn't have a clear weakness. He doesn't like women too. In his eyes, women are just some sort of tools he can use and advantages he can take for granted, added Shang Yingyu in a cold voice. This man is the toughest warrior of the current generation of the God clan. Almost all of his opponents were killed, said Wu Feng with a cold face. While they were giving him information, Shi Yang's face became more grimaced. After they've finished, he took a deep breath and then said, "I'm giving you bad news. He found out that I can use the soul consciousness like him. He has challenged me. Right now, he, Phelps, and MIA are diverging in 3 directions. They are heading towards us." All of them discolored and their hearts sank into the abyss. They felt begrudging as if they couldn't escape the cage. "We should run quickly," Jiao Shan shouted. Pouting his lips, Shi Yang eyed him with mocking eyes. "Run? Run where? There are 4 directions, east, west, north, and south. Phelps, MIA, and Haig are heading to us from the east, west, and south. North of us is the barrier that connects to another piece of territory. Tell me where to run. Perhaps we should head to MIA. Mia's team is damaged. Perhaps we can defeat her team," said Cecilia. "Haig has prepared her," Shi Yang looked at her and said faintly, "he has strengthened her team with more experts. Now, Mia's team can beat us up easily. Phelps's team has never been damaged, so we aren't their opponent. And Haig's team, it's impossible," muttered Mo Fu, his face solemn. "So, we have only one choice, which is heading north. Let's see if we can drill through the barrier to get to the other territory to dodge this sharp spear. If the warriors like us are all killed by a troop of the God clan in that new territory, what should we do?" frowned Wu Feng. Everybody fell into silence. As things came to this, they knew the God clan's conspiracy. What Wu Feng said could be true. In the new territory they wanted to go through, there might be a strong God clan troop, which had cleared all the warriors there and was waiting by the border. If they got through the barrier, they would be killed shortly after. Shi Yang, can you sense the commotions in that territory? Asked Shang Yingyu all of a sudden. I can't. It has the barrier. I have to get inside to sense the commotion of living beings there. Shi Yang shook his head. What should we do? What to do now? Which way to choose? Everybody was restlessly anxious because they knew that MIA, Phelps, and Haig were getting closer every minute they'd lingered here. This kind of pressure made them restless. They were on the edge of collapsing. Shi Yang looked at them and felt anxious. He knew that he must come up with a direction. Whether it was correct or not, at least they would have a target that wouldn't make them wait for death passively. Head north. We're going to that barrier. We have to make this bet. Shi Yang ordered resolutely. Staying in this swamp, one of the other 3 teams will get us and slowly kill us. As Haig is with them, we can't hide. We don't have any hope to live. We must get there. Everybody else was flustered at the moment. They thought that only Shi Yang could give them guidance. Thus, no one opposed his idea. They nodded in agreement. Shi Yang didn't talk more. He led the group and moved. Follow me. Use your god power. We must rush. Just like sharp swords, they followed Shi Yang and flew north of the swamp. When they departed, Haig was talking to Phelps and MIA to show them the way. He had them updated with their location every minute. Young master, they're heading to the thick woods. If nothing's unexpected, it's where Yu Jiao is in charge, reminded Peyton. Although Yu Jiao is also arrogant and self-righteous, he has the competence. I guess he has finished clearing his area. Haig pondered and frowned, but we still need to clarify a little bit. I will ask him to get to the barrier and wait for the praise. We're going to give them a beating. Excellent, said Peyton in excitement. Haig took out the soundstone, checking and then talking directly. Yu Jiao, it's me, Haig. I'm in the swamp territory with Phelps and MIA. Some fish from our area are heading to you. Come to the border and wait for them. Don't let them escape. Haig advised, and then he became bewildered. Looking at the soundstone, his face became awkward. The soundstone glowed, which meant that Haig had connected with Yu Jiao, but Yu Jiao didn't answer him. Haig felt like something was wrong here, but he didn't know what had happened. After a while, a calm female voice arose from the soundstone. The man you want to contact is dead. The people he brought here are also dead. Then, the soundstone dimmed out. The other had cut off the connection. Haig and Peyton discolored in fright. Chapter 1135, Cross the Border. Chapter 1135, Cross the Border. Haig and Peyton halted. The warriors of the Bradley family were bewildered. They also stopped and scattered around the two, looking at them cluelessly. Haig's fingers fiddled with the sound stone. He wanted to talk more, but the sound slow didn't glow anymore. He couldn't form the connection with the other side. Peyton grimaced. He knitted his brows and showed his agitation. Yu Jiao came from the Boramos family. He was at peak of ethereal god realm, his competence too domineering. He had brought a retinue of many experts. His team's general competence was stronger than Mia's or Phelps's. However, Yu Jiao couldn't lead his dominant team to clear his territory. Quite the contrary, his team was all killed. Peyton found it hard to accept. Hesitating, he looked at Haig and muttered, Yu Jiao was from the Boramos family. If they were all killed, it would be hard for us to explain. If we can't finish their enemies, we can't give the Boramos family a proper explanation. Haig squinted. Pondering for a while, he nodded, I'll give them a proper explanation. He hurried to contact MIA and Phelps, asking them to continue chasing after Shi Yang's team. And he carefully asked them to not cross the border to the new territory. They had to wait until he came. MIA and Phelps were confused, but they just agreed without asking for more details. At the end of the swamp was an area where toxic green air hovered as thick as water. The poisonous air gathered in masses, creating natural tents that kept people out. Mo Fu, Cecilia, and Wu Feng stood in front of the area of toxic green air, wincing instinctively. They looked at Sho Zhao. Sho Zhao didn't wait for them to give him a request. He released a lot of demonic insects and poisonous animals. Those tiny creatures buzzed, rattling and flying into the center of the toxic area. After a while, Sho Zhao looked so worried, frowning tightly. The poison of this toxic air is really terrible. It can intrude the sea of consciousness and the soul. It will paralyze the soul altar and affect even the ethereal extent. Behind the layer of toxic air is a barrier leading to another piece of territory. It's a natural barrier that is hard to break. Pausing, Sho Zhao said bitterly, none of the insects I've released could cross it. Can we break that toxic air curtain? Wu Feng was agitatedly waving his fan. He walked to the adjacent area with the toxic air, frowning and assessing. He released a flow of soul consciousness to sense. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. A faint smoke arose from the green toxic air area. Right after that, Wu Feng paled and shouted, "This F*King toy can affect the soul consciousness too. I said it could intrude the sea of consciousness. Of course, it can affect the soul consciousness. I suggest not using the soul consciousness to sense anything," said Sho Zhao seriously. "Do you have any idea?" asked Cecilia impatiently. "I know how to use the toxins, but I'm not good at dissolving them. I can only treat the toxins of my GU insects. I'm afraid I can't do anything to other poisonous substances." Sho Zhao shook his head. Hearing him, everybody was baffled. Now they all looked at him in disdain. "I'm from the GU God sect. Our sect cultivates GU insects and we harvest the toxins from them. We don't refine poisons or potions. You must know that. We aren't poison alchemist." Under people's gazes, Sho Zhao winced and said indignantly, "What should we do now?" Mo Fu stood up, his line of sight raking through the Wu brothers, the Jiao brothers, and Shong Yingyu. "If you have any solution, please do tell. We don't have much time." Everybody was frowning. They were trying to figure out how to solve this problem. However, due to the trivial output they could contribute, no one had stood out to say anything. People then lay their hope on Sho Zhao once again. Cecilia said, "Only you have some knowledge of toxins and poisons here. If you can't do anything, I think we will have a lot of trouble." Everybody agreed, their faces dark. Not only me though. Under everyone's gazes, Sho Zhao glanced at Shi Yang and said hesitantly, "We don't have the ability to solve the toxic air here. Unless you help us." Everybody was astounded. "He knows how to deal with poisons too? I remembered the first time I fought with you. I used the secret technique of the GU God sect to deal with you and attempted to intrude your soul altar. I lost that battle." Sho Zhao took a deep breath and said, "I know you can solve this. If you don't help us, we will be all in trouble." Hearing him, Shong Yingyu also remembered the battle taken place 5 years ago. Her brows twitched, her bright eyes looking at Shi Yang with hope. Sho Zhao and Shong Yingyu's expression had affected the others. They all eyed Shi Yang and found that he didn't pay attention to their discussion. He looked anxious, indeed. Everybody exchanged looks. They assumed that he was using his soul consciousness to check the situation. Although they were all impatient, no one dared to bother him. "No one knows what's waiting for us on the other side of the barrier. Do you really want to go here?" Shi Yang wore a strange face, frowning after he had pulled himself together. Through the barrier, he could vaguely feel the powerful life energy fluctuations over there. However, since they weren't in the same territory, he couldn't sense clearly. He couldn't differentiate whether it was the God clan or warriors from the other star areas. He felt anxious because of the energy he had sensed, which was so strong that it had made his soul shiver in fright. "Do we have any better choice?" Cecilia forced a smile. Everybody shook their heads. "All right, I'm going to open the barrier. You guys have to get through it quickly." Shi Yang nodded, and while the others hadn't reacted yet, he dashed into the area covered in the toxic green air and disappeared. Everybody was startled. Does he know how to solve the toxic air? Cecilia looked at Sho Zhao, her bright eyes surprised. Why does he know a little bit of everything? He can solve the poisonous air curtain that you can't do anything about? What do you think? Seems that he did it successfully, Mofu cried, his face filled with inexplicable fright. Cecilia turned her head to watch. They then saw the toxic green masses like the clouds thinning under some strange power. The green clouds thinned, faded, and drifted away from their area. Shuo Zhao, Shong Yingyu, and the others gasped in astonishment. They felt like they saw ghosts in daylight. This speed is too fast, eh? Swish. An eye-catching blood-red light appeared like a curtain that was torn by a murderous aura and shooting up into the sky. A fresh air swarmed over and whirled on their faces. It was the sign of the cracked barrier. Get in, quickly, Shi Yang shouted. They didn't dare to linger. They shot over like lightning bolts, swaying through the cut. Their auras disappeared from the swamp shortly. The green toxic air curtain that had disappeared gathered again from other directions. It became thicker and thicker after seconds. After several minutes, the toxic air hovering above the area reappeared. The cut on the barrier closed as if nothing had happened here. 4 hours later, MIA, Phelps, and Haig gathered in this area. They watched the surroundings with a strange countenance. A strange halo emitted from their eyes. Clearing that vast forest was Yu Zhuo's task. After Haig had arrived, he said simply, but his words were bombs. Anyway, Yu Zhuo died. MIA, Phelps, and the members of their families were baffled. They all felt a sudden chill. They had a clear gleam of fear on their eyes when they looked at the barrier. Some god warriors who stood near the barrier couldn't help but take several steps backward, coming to where their leaders gathered. It felt like a monster was hiding deep inside the green toxic air curtain that they couldn't see. It made them restlessly anxious. When I contacted Yu Zhuo, a woman told me that. She said that Yu Zhuo and his family's warriors were all dead. Haig was still calm, looking at MIA and Phelps. What do you think? Yu Zhuo's force was really strong. If his warriors and even himself were killed, it means that the enemy is even stronger. MIA gave an explicit answer. Phelps said with a dark visage, seems we need to discuss more. We don't know whoever is behind that barrier and how strong they are. We shouldn't act rashly. We should gather all our warriors. We must not make any mistake. MIA pondered and said, I think we should contact Hassan the madman. Everybody couldn't help but knit their brows. Although Hassan has a little mental problem, his competence and his men are solid. Much stronger than Yu Zhuo's team. If he comes with us, we can be more certain of our triumph. MIA looked at Haig and said earnestly, I know you and Hassan don't get along well. Anyway, you've proposed this operation. If it fails, I think you. No need to say that. You contact Hassan. I hope he wouldn't die yet. Haig waved his hand, his countenance really bad. MIA nodded and took out her sound stone. There were many islets scattered around a vast ocean like stars decorating the sea. This was another territory of the ancient continent, which looked dreamily beautiful. From a bird's view, people would find a group of god warriors gathering on a small island not far from MIA and Phelps. Lying disorderly on the rocky island were bodies of warriors from different races, males and females from different star areas. A group of god warriors had bloodstains all over their bodies. They looked manic as if they were extreme disciples of some wicked cult. They were drinking blood from the bowl they held in their hands. A fire was burning fiercely in between them with a delicate grill where a jade-white female arm was being roasted. Those mad men were drinking fresh blood and roasting the woman's arm to amuse themselves. The young man leading this group was bony. He was swinging his hands while moving delightedly in bizarre dance moves. He looked freaking crazy with blood dripping from his mouth. A lozenge sound stone was glowing in his hand, but he didn't notice as he was busy in a crazy dance. We've just finished cleaning this place. We're throwing a party here. I'm not interested in Haig's stuff. Tell him to mind his own business. I'm not going there. The gaunt young man that looked like a starving ghost threw the sound stone to his side, continuing his party with his retinue, the ones who had the same freaky appearance. He didn't even bat an eye. Chapter 1136, The Four Great Creatures. Chapter 1136, The Four Great Creatures. It was an endless forest with big, lush trees. Each of them was hundreds of meters high. The trees looked no different from the mountains. The fresh auras slapped their faces, making Shi Yang's team astounded after they went through the barrier. Gradually, they pulled themselves together to observe the surroundings. Oh! Cecilia couldn't help but scream, her beautiful face anxious and gingerly. Mo Fu, Shuo Jiao, and the Wu brothers also changed their visages and frowned. They solemnly looked at the warriors standing in front of them. Under the shade of a towering tree, many warriors from different races were standing, their auras brutal and abundant. They were gazing at the newcomers, their faces strange. Evidently, they weren't members of the God clan. The leader of this group was a woman who looked tall and thin. She had a faint green hair reaching her waist. Outlining her body was a long green dress that touched the ground. Her face was so exquisite with a perfect ratio for her facial features. She had a green crystal imperial crown on her head. She was noble and arrogant. She was looking at the newcomers with her cold, crystal-clear emerald eyes. Standing on her sides were 4 male warriors who apparently were from the same tribe. They wore shining armor, their faces stern and cold, surrounding her. Many warriors from different star areas and races scattered around this woman. They protected her as if she was the moon and they were stars. They had considered her life their top priority to protect. A group of green flames was flickering above her head, releasing the clear soul energy fluctuation. Shi Yang glanced at the woman, his pupils shrinking. He was astonished. Lucky for him, before he had gone through the barrier, he had retrieved his co-soul into his soul altar. Otherwise, they would know his secret immediately when she saw him. Because that woman was like him. They were the sort of special existences that had fused with the origin. On this ancient continent, they weren't be bound. The green flame floating above her head was another soul of hers that could sense the different commotions of the ancient continent. Shi Yang was frightened. First, it was Haig and now, it was this woman. This ancient continent was really marvelous as it had attracted the most outstanding warriors from the universe, gathering in one place. Looking at the unknown woman, thoughts crossed his head rapidly. The more he thought, the more frightened he became. If she was still alive, it spoke up to the fact that the God clan's troop in this territory was cleaned up. This finding astounded Shi Yang. He became more cautious looking at the woman. He was considering his words and how to talk to them. Mo Fu, Cecilia, Wu Feng, Shuo Jiao, and the others were also bewildered. They all looked strange. From what they heard from Shi Yang, they knew the woman in green in front of them was like Haig. She was a peculiar existence that the ancient continent didn't shackle. They became excited, their faces bright. "You guys have killed all the God clan's warriors in this territory?" asked Mo Fu excitedly. Including that woman, this group had 26 warriors from different races. Their realms and powers were tremendous. Compared to them, their force had only 12 warriors including Shi Yang. Apparently, their general competence was behind the others. Moreover, Mo Fu could see that this force of 26 warriors was enough to deal with Haig's, Mia's, or Phelps's troop. As Mo Fu's team was in the dead end, they were forced to get through the barrier to reach this territory. And now, seeing 26 warriors whose situation was almost similar to theirs, he had a joy of finding the exit in the death trap. Unfortunately, what the woman was about to tell them had smashed his excitement. "You guys have 2 options," said the chilly, arrogant woman. From her bearings, it seemed like everybody had to listen to her orders and should bow on her feet. This was some kind of the innate dominant personality she was given. Listening to my order, working for me, or returning to your territory. I've exerted my efforts to clear this place. People who don't obey aren't allowed to stay. Mo Fu's team knitted their brows. "I think you know about the God clan's clearance operation in the ancient continent. Just like you guys, we're also victims. Haig, MIA, and Phelps have chased after us. Begrudgingly, we had to cross the barrier to this area. We hoped that we could unite and resist the God clan." Cecilia gave an unnatural smile and explained, "If we return, we can't escape from Haig's team one more time. We could be. It has nothing to do with us." The woman intervened her and said faintly, "I will repeat one more time. Listen to my order or leave this place. Otherwise, we will kill you all." As soon as she said that, the sharp aura was shot out by the other 25 warriors of her team. They were like needles stabbing Mo Fu, Cecilia, and the others, making them agitated. Why? Wu Feng's face was dark and gloomy. You aren't qualified to bargain with me. The woman turned impatiently, walking deep into the dense woods and leaving them cold words. I'm giving you 5 minutes to consider. The 4 warriors from her clan followed her, walking into the forest to protect her. The other warriors lay down or leaned against the trees. They looked cold and harsh when looking at the others. Poke. You are Poke, right? Sho Jiao suddenly screamed as he spotted someone. It was a hunky dark spirit man. He looked a little surprised, gazing at Sho Jiao for seconds before he could react. You are Sho Jiao of the Jiu God sect. It's me. Sho Jiao forced a smile and probed, could you tell me what's going on here? The dark spirit man he called Poke looked at the members of his team. Seeing that they were indifferent, he hesitated for a while and then said, Audrey is the princess of the Imperial Dark Tribe. Without her command, we would have all been killed by Yu Jia. We've cleaned all the warriors of the God clan in this territory. All is thanks to Audrey's extraordinary abilities. Since we are friends, I advise you to listen to Audrey. That way, you can save your life. Poke stopped after he said that and shrugged. Cecilia, Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and the others listened carefully. When they knew that Audrey was the princess of the Imperial Dark Tribe, they looked genuinely shocked. Sho Jiao changed his visage and contemplated. Next, he turned to Shi Yang and then Cecilia, Mo Fu, asking silently. Cecilia gestured and they retreated, remaining a distance so that the others couldn't see them with naked eyes. They set up a soundproof barrier before starting their discussion. The woman called Audrey is the princess of the Imperial Dark Tribe. What is that clan? You don't know the Imperial Dark Tribe? Cecilia was surprised. Shi Yang shook his head. The Imperial Dark Tribe is the royal family of the Dark Clan. They are in Dark Star area, a mysterious galaxy in the universe. The God-blessed mainland, one of the 5 ancient continents in Dark Star area, is the ancestral star of the Imperial Dark Tribe. It is the cradle of the Dark Clan. The Imperial Dark Tribe rarely forms a relationship with the other star areas. This tribe is superb. No one can compete with them in understanding the soul altar. I heard that they have a special method to cultivate their soul altar, which is indeed mysterious and unpredictable. Different from the Dark Clan with the lanky physique, the Imperial Dark Tribe has tough bodies. Dark Star area is also the holy land of the Dark Clan in this universe. The Imperial Dark Tribe is also one of the 4 great creatures, explained Cecilia. So the Imperial Dark Tribe is mighty? To what level? Shi Yang was more surprised. Okay, it's like this. At the dawn of this universe, the Imperial Dark Tribe was one of the most combative races in the world. Just like how the God Clan conquered the big star areas, their force was really enormous. However, after a bloody battle where they were defeated, they had lost a large number of clansmen. It has taken them more than dozens of thousands of years. Yet they haven't recovered yet. Thus, they've stayed within Dark Star area until now. They haven't risen any storm ever since, continued Cecilia. You said the Imperial Dark Tribe is one of the 4 great creatures. What are those? Shi Yang didn't have a clue. Honestly, he didn't have much knowledge of the mysteries of the universe. Raging Flame Star area wasn't a high-level star area. And at the same time, it was closed and conservative, which led to the limited information Shi Yang had of many great events taken place in the vast universe. Cecilia, Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and the others were different. Their star areas often exchanged things with the others. They knew many strange and exotic things in this vast sea of stars that Shi Yang didn't know. Shi Yang really appreciated their information. He's from Agate Star area. It's my father's homeland. But this star area has closed all the space canals. Thus, they can't contact the outer world. They just live in their small star area. Shong Ying Yu cleared voice arose. She looked at the others and said, let me explain the story of the 4 great creatures. I think I may know more information. Everybody knew Shong Ying Yu's father was Shong Chen, the fate traveler who had visited many star areas. Thus, They didn't oppose her idea and nodded in agreement. Please tell me, Shi Yang looked earnest, focusing on her to listen for more helpful information. You know we have 5 ancient continents, right? Asked Shang Yingyu. Shi Yang nodded, the ancient demon, the ancient god, desolate, Grace mainland, and what's the other? It's the god-blessed mainland. Shang Yingyu's eyes were clear but cold. She continued naturally, the 5 ancient continents were born at the dawn of the universe. Besides desolate where we are now, the other 4 ancient continents have given birth to magical and unique creatures. Ancient demon continent gave birth to the immortal demon clan. Ancient god continent bore the god clan. God-blessed mainland delivered the imperial dark tribe. And Grace mainland, the ancient continent that had disappeared for years, had the immemorial monster clan and also the heavenly monster tribe. Shang Yingyu paused for a while and then continued, God clan, immortal demon clan, the imperial dark tribe, and the heavenly monster tribe are the 4 great creatures that came from the 4 ancient continents. Chapter 1137, Heavenly Monster Tribe and Imperial Dark Tribe. Chapter 1137, Heavenly Monster Tribe and Imperial Dark Tribe. Wait a minute, what's that heavenly monster tribe you've mentioned? Shi Yang intervened anxiously. Grace mainland was one of the ancient continents. Shi Yang understood that, but he didn't know the heavenly monster tribe Shang Yingyu had mentioned that was born on Grace mainland. He suddenly recalled the words of heavenly monster. The Vault of Heaven Sea area in the Endless Sea had a mountain range called the Heavenly Monster Mountain Range. Ghost Hunter, Holy Spirit God, Devouring Gold Silkworm, and the King of Demonic Insects had received an inheritance in the Heavenly Monster Mountain Range and found the space passage that led to Agate Star area. Would it relate to something? He was puzzled. I heard that the immemorial monster tribe in Grace mainland is called the Immemorial Creatures. Legends say that the 4 holy beasts including the vermilion bird, the white tiger, the black torture, and the azure dragon were great ancestors of the heavenly monster tribe. Cecilia has mentioned the decline of the imperial dark tribe tens of thousands of years ago in a bloody battle that had shut them for years. The tribe that had fought them was the heavenly monster tribe. The consequences of that battle were that the imperial dark tribe hasn't gotten up yet and the heavenly monster tribe has gone secluding. It seems that their ancestral star, Grace mainland, had vanished altogether. No one could find it, said Shang Yingyu. Shi Yang was shaken hard. Grace mainland used to have 3 different eras, which were the immemorial epoch, the antiquity era, and the ancient time. Legends said that immemorial creatures were born in immemorial epoch. They were the kind of living beings with massive bodies that could connect to earth and heaven energy directly, and their life seal carried the essence of power Upanishad. Because of their existence, Grace mainland, an ancient continent, couldn't hold it anymore. Its earth and heaven energy was drained fast, which led to an exhaustion of energy. During the immemorial epoch, they had left the Grace mainland to outer space, moving in different star areas. According to Shang Yingyu, they were called the Heavenly Monster Tribe, the ancestors of Monster Clan. The current Monster Clan was their descendant after they had scattered in different star areas. They could only call themselves Monster Clan instead of Heavenly Monster Tribe. If the Heavenly Monster Mountain Range was the cradle of the Heavenly Monster Tribe and if the 4 holy beasts were the precursors of the Heavenly Monster Tribe, after Ghost Hunter got the inheritance from the Heavenly Monster Mountain Range and Zhuosha got the inheritance from the Black Tortoise, would they become members of the Heavenly Monster Tribe? God Clan, Immortal Demon Clan, Imperial Dark Tribe, and Heavenly Monster Tribe are the 4 great creatures. Throughout billions of years in this vast universe, these 4 races were always the key members of the universe. In some era, the Immortal Demon Clan could rule the whole world. And in the next era, the Imperial Dark Tribe would be the main characters, or perhaps it would be the Heavenly Monster Tribe. Most of the time, they have fought against each other. These 4 races were born gifted. Their existences were the nightmares to the other races. The other clans or tribes would always be their backdrop. When these 4 races were strong, the others could only be their feudal vassals or be killed. They had never had the slightest change to top these 4 races. Shang Yingyu was speaking while Cecilia, Mo Fu, Wu Bai, Wu Feng, Jiao Shan, and Shojiao were giving compliments as if they hated that they weren't from these four great clans. In our era, the immortal demon clan and the heavenly monster tribe are secluding somewhere. They rarely show up. The Imperial Dark Tribe guards their Darkstar area. They don't want to contact people from the outside. However, no other clan or force dared to provoke them. The God Clan is now the tyrannical overlord of this era. However, no matter how arrogant they don't dare to operate around Darkstar area. Shang Yingyu looked at Shi Yang, her face solemn. If Audrey's the princess of the Imperial Dark Tribe, and she has the origin of the God-blessed continent, she will have the competence to battle Hague. Shi Yang stayed quiet while the others nodded. No wonder why she's so arrogant. Turns out that she's the princess of Imperial Dark Tribe. No wonder, sighed Mo Fu. The members of the four great creatures have never put any other creature in their concern. They only know each other as they considered the others as their rivals. They were born with a sense of superiority. I can understand Audrey, though, added Cecilia. Shi Yang was surprised. After those people knew the princess title of Audrey of the Imperial Dark Tribe, the discontent they had for her was washed away. They thought that Audrey's arrogance was something natural. No one felt offended. It seemed that somehow deep in their minds, they had acknowledged the high position of the four great creatures. They thought that Audrey should behave like that as it suited her noble echelon. Currently, the Immortal Demon Clan and the Heavenly Monster Tribe have been secluding. We can guess that they are resting to recover, and that's why they don't mind the current picture of the universe. If there's any clan who isn't afraid of the God Clan, it will be the Imperial Dark Tribe alone. Cecilia paused for a while before continuing all of a sudden. Let's talk about the main business. What do you think? Listen to her. If she's the princess of the Imperial Dark Tribe, I don't want to go against her, Mo Fu expressed himself. Yeah, if we stay with her team, we can fight Hague, Wu Feng also nodded. The other people voiced their opinions. After they knew that Audrey was the princess of the Imperial Dark Tribe, they quickly unified. They even looked excited as if they wanted to fight against Hague, MIA, Phelps once under Audrey's command. And Shi Yang. He was surprised for a while, but he didn't know whether to cry or smile. Begrudgingly, Shi Yang nodded and agreed with people's decision. Should he tell them that he was a pureblood of the Immortal Demon Clan? It could work because it had rooted in their heads that only the members of the Immortal Demon Clan, Heavenly Monster Tribe, and the Imperial Dark Tribe could resist Hague's team. However, Audrey's team was stronger. He couldn't be their leader, anyway. Thus, it was the same whether he told them or not. It was better to shade his corona and hide his identity and real competence. He should listen to the others for the time being. Audrey may not know that I have the ability like hers and that I'm not bound by the ancient continent. Agree with me and say no word about me. So when she has bad intentions towards us and makes us the sacrifice, I can get it and tell you guys. We won't die unknowingly, said Shi Yang. He had stressed his good intentions, which was to protect everybody but himself. He knew that Cecilia, Wu Feng, and the others cared about them first. They would consider everything related to their welfare their priority. Indeed, Mo Fu, Cecilia, and Wu Feng didn't need a long time to consider and agree with his suggestion. Shi Yang didn't need to say more. He knew that the others had made up their minds. They wouldn't disclose his identity. It wasn't that they wanted to give him face. It was because of their safety and their welfare. What else do you know of Grace Mainland? After they had agreed with him, Shi Yang calmed down and asked Shang Yingyu, you said that Grace Mainland is one of the ancient continents and that after the war between the Heavenly Monster Tribe and the Imperial Dark Tribe, it has never shown up until now? No, Shang Yingyu frowned. They rumored that the Heavenly Monster Tribe had moved Grace Mainland away and pushed it to the edge of the universe. No one has rediscovered this ancient continent yet. Just like ancient Demon Continent, Grace Mainland is the most mysterious. It's possibly because of their defeat that they didn't want the enemy to hunt them down to the last member. The Immortal Demon Clan was defeated by the God Clan. Their ancient demon continent also disappeared. No one sees them in the Sea of the Stars. That's how they could be strong once again in the future. Shi Yang nodded in his head. He pondered and then figured out that although he had seen the starry sky in Grace Mainland, those stars should be pretty far away from him. And there wasn't any warrior from the other planet who came to tell him whichever star area Grace Mainland belonged. Grace Mainland was an ancient continent and a star. Logically, it should stay close to many other life stars. However, Shi Yang had never found any warrior from the other life stars paying a visit. Today, listening to Shang Yingyu, he knew that Grace Mainland was placed at the edge of the universe that didn't belong to any star area or had any neighbors. It existed in a secluded area, to be exact. He bought whatever Shang Yingyu had told him related to Grace Mainland. Finally, he knew that Grace Mainland used to have times of glory. It was one of the 5 ancient continents of the cosmos, and it had given birth to the heavenly monster tribe, one of the 4 great creatures. And as for the heavenly monster tribe that used to be domineering, how many members of them had survived? Where were they? Would they return to Grace Mainland one day? Since Shi Yang had the origin of Grace Mainland, did it mean that he had a close relationship with the heavenly monster tribe? Were Ghost Hunter and Zwersh members of this great race? Could they sense and contact the members of their tribe? If they got stronger, would they have to battle against the Imperial Dark Tribe? All of a sudden, Shi Yang had so many questions in his mind and his heart was a messy ball of cotton threads. For the time being, he had immersed in the mysteries of the 4 great creatures and the ancient continents. Stroking the blood vein ring, he thought that the ring spirit could give him some assistance. Unfortunately, the ring spirit was still dormant. It didn't give him any response for quite a long time. Time's up. Suddenly, Mo Fu hissed and told them to come back and give Princess Audrey of the Imperial Dark Tribe their answer. Yeah, we should get over there. She's the princess of the Imperial Dark Tribe. Only she can lead us to fight against Haig. We may get the triumph at the end. Wu Feng nodded, waving his fan and gently moving forward. Shuo Zhao, Zhao Shan, Cecilia, and the others didn't talk more. They left with happy faces as they had finally found a big rock to lean on. In their minds, Audrey was now indeed much more important than Shi Yang. She was their new backbone. Chapter 1138, Join Hands. Chapter 1138, Join Hands. Mo Fu and Wu Feng led them back to the gathering point of the other team. Princess Audrey of the Imperial Dark Tribe stood under the shade of a big tree, her face cold and arrogant and her posture superior. Waiting for Mo Fu and Cecilia to come, she said impatiently, "Are you done thinking? We've made up our minds. We are willing to be under your command." Wu Feng gently waved his fan and beamed brightly. He represented the group to give the answer. After he had known that Audrey the princess of the Imperial Dark Tribe, when Wu Feng eyed the woman, he had a gleam of secret admiration in his eyes. He seemed to like Audrey a lot. This man always wore a dark and stern face. However, his countenance was bright and smiling now. Wu Feng's expression made Cecilia and Shang Yingyu disdain him discreetly. The 2 women had their bright eyes observing Mo Fu, Shuo Zhao, Zhao Shan, and the others. Cecilia's and Shang Yingyu's bold brows knitted slightly as they found that most of the men on their team didn't look different from Wu Feng. Their looks attached to Audrey with obvious emotions. Shi Yang was the only exception. When he treated Audrey, he still looked cold and stern as usual. He didn't have any different change on his face. Cecilia and Shi Yang nodded secretly as they appreciated Shi Yang more. They knew that it wasn't just his luck that he could gain the upper hand in dealing with MIA and Phelps. In their eyes, Shi Yang wasn't ordinary. Good. Audrey nodded. Her line of sight raked through them as she said, "Tell me in detail about the force of the God Clan in your territory. I want to know their specific competencies to prepare better." She looked at Wu Feng. There are Haig of the Bradley family, MIA of the Fernandez family, and Phelps of the Ascot family. These 3 leaders have forces staying in the swamp opposite to us. Haig has just arrived. Previously, we were fighting MIA and Phelps. Wu Feng frankly told her the situation he knew. Then, he added, Haig isn't bound by the ancient continent. His soul consciousness has a strong ability of detecting. Thus, we couldn't hide there. We have to move here. Hague has the origin of the ancient god continent. Of course, he wouldn't be shackled in this continent. I know that. Audrey wasn't surprised and she said deliberately, anything else I need to pay more attention to? Wu Feng frowned and glanced at Shi Yang unconsciously. He then saw Shi Yang's cold face with a warning gleam in his eyes. His mind flickered before he shook his head. That's the situation over there. You guys stay here. Do not leave the barrier. Let's see if Hague's team dares to come here. Light danced in Audrey's green pupils. She walked towards Mo Fu's side. The other 4 members of the Imperial Dark Tribe followed her on her sides so she would be at the center. Audrey stopped in front of the layers of toxic air. Looking at the thick masses of poisonous air hovering and sensing the powerful energy of the barrier between the 2 territories, she asked, "How did you get here?" Just like the situation of the swamp area, this side behind the barrier also had layers of toxic air. And at the same time, the barrier between the 2 areas was really tenacious. Ordinary people couldn't just simply break it. Especially because of the masses of toxic air, Audrey couldn't help but frown after sensing the toxic air. With her in-depth knowledge of the soul altar, she knew that this kind of toxic gas could erode the soul and make the sea of consciousness change unpredictably. Audrey's cold and arrogant eyes scanned Mo Fu, Wu Feng, Cecilia, and eventually, Shuo Jiao. She asked curiously, "Did you break it?" Shuo Jiao shook his head. "Then who?" Audrey continued asking. She felt surprised, indeed. In this group, she found that only Shuo Jiao from the Jiyu God sect perhaps knew how to deal with the toxic gas. She didn't see this special ability in other people. Pausing for a while, Audrey continued speaking, "We used to visit this area when we were chasing after Yu Jiao. As they didn't have anywhere to run, they had tried to cross this barrier to enter the swamp territory. He failed in the end. We've tried to get through it and go to the swamp area. However, we found it too troublesome to dissolve the toxic green air. I want to know who opened the barrier. It's very important." Mo Fu, Shuo Jiao, Wu Feng looked at Shi Yang at the same time after Audrey had said that. Audrey was surprised. It was the first time she studied Shi Yang, her voice strange. "Was it you?" Among Mo Fu, Shuo Jiao, Cecilia, and the others, Shi Yang at second sky of ethereal god realm wasn't outstanding at all. Moreover, he didn't urge his energy but concealed it. Thus, right from the start, Audrey hadn't concerned him. When Mo Fu and Shuo Jiao looked at him, Audrey also eyed Shi Yang for the first time. Her fulgent emerald green eyes focused on Shi Yang. A flow of unknown soul consciousness like a stream of transparent, cool water came out and ran directly into Shi Yang's head, which made him discolor. He suddenly recognized that Audrey was using her strong sensing ability to check his soul and body. She wanted to see every tiny thing he was hiding. It was a special power of the ones who had fused with origin. Just like Shi Yang, he could see the realm of the enemy at first glance. A thought emerged and Shi Yang's soul altar changed immediately. Starlight dots glowed and twinkled inside his head, covering his soul altar entirely. When Audrey's soul altar came near, it was blinded in that mysterious and bright light curtain. It was like an intense beam of light struck her eyes. She couldn't see the mysterious features of Shi Yang's soul altar. Reflected in her soul consciousness, Shi Yang's soul altar was a piece of a twinkling galaxy that was indeed mysterious and she couldn't see through it. She wasn't so persistent. After a slight frown, she retrieved her soul consciousness and said faintly, "If you don't want me to see your secrets, I'm not going to force you. I just want to ask you one question. If I request you to break the barrier, can you do that?" Shi Yang turned his head to see the thick toxic gas masses behind them and nodded. "If it's the area behind us, it's not a big problem. However, I need my full god power to do that." "Excellent," appraised Audrey. "But if you want me to break the barrier and return to the swamp, it's not a good idea." Shi Yang didn't look at Audrey but the layers of green gas. He said in a low-pitched tone, "The combined force of Hague, MIA, and Phelps is 1 level stronger than us. If we face them directly, we can't gain the upper hand." "I know that," Audrey nodded, her voice cold. "We will wait for them to get through the barrier then. We will install the restrictions here. Let's see if they dare to come." Everyone's eyes brightened. It was true. If Haig's team wanted to pursue them, they had to cross the barrier first. If they could set up a lot of restrictions here, they could damage the others severely. "We can do that," said Cecilia. "Then we should hurry and prepare." Audrey delivered a series of orders. The warriors started to take action under her commands. She divided the barrier into many sections, arranging teams and team leaders. Under her management, people began their works orderly. "You don't need to take action. You just need to maintain your best condition for us." When Shi Yang was about to join them, Audrey shouted coldly, "I don't care how you break the barrier, but I want you to know that when I need you to break it, you must try your best. Or else, I'll let you die a terrible death that will be much worse than if Haig kills you." "Oh yeah, I don't have much to do then." Shi Yang didn't mind that. He found a big tree trunk to sit down and closed his eyes to rest. On the other side of the barrier. "Harson doesn't want to come." Mia reluctantly put her sound stone away. "It seems like we have to do it ourselves." Phelps squinted, looking at the thick masses of toxic gas with a dark face. After a while, he waved his hand. "I can't break this barrier. Unless you have a safe method to open it, I'm not going to get there in vain." He looked at Haig. All the warriors looked at Haig too. At this moment, they obviously assumed that Haig could always give them away. "Harson always acts alone. He doesn't get along well with people. I knew we couldn't count on him." Haig didn't change his visage. He wasn't enraged because Harson didn't want to cooperate. Looking at the thick toxic gas in front of them, he said calmly, "If we can get here from the land of ice, of course, we can get into the forest area too. It's not a problem for me to break the barrier." "Then, what is making you hesitate?" Phelps didn't understand. "I'm worried if there is a death trap behind the barrier." Frowning, Haig looked stern. "I think something is wrong. The woman who killed Yu Jie sounded too placid when I talked to her. She is not afraid of us." "Hey, they are not afraid of us. Is there someone in the Sea of Stars not afraid of our clan?" Phelps said haughtily. Many warriors of the God clan looked arrogant. They acted as if their clan was the sole powerhouses of this vast universe. They didn't want to put anyone in their eyes. "Right, she isn't afraid of us." Mia suddenly cried. With a strange light in her pupils, she said, "If she's a member of the other three clans, it's true that she won't be wary of us. This trip to the ancient continent is really interesting. I've met one of them." Hearing her, Haig, Phelps, and the other members of the God clan were shocked. "Who? These clans?" Haig said sternly. "It's the man cultivates space power Upanishad. He has the immortal demon blood. He can transform into the immortal demon body." Mia gritted her teeth. "He and I used to fight. To be honest, I'm not sure if I could defeat him." Haig, Phelps, and the others changed their visages. Their arrogance faces vanished. They began to consider the matter seriously. The God clan was arrogant and stubborn. They wouldn't be afraid of most of the other races. However, when facing the immortal demon clan, the imperial dark tribe, and the heavenly monster tribe, they would never be so haughty. Chapter 1139, Deadlock. Chapter 1139, Deadlock. Ancient continent. The vast swamp and the forest were just a barrier apart. This barrier separated the God clan's team led by Haig, Mia, and Phelps, and Audrey and Mofu's team. The toxic gas and the barrier fenced them off. No party dared to act rashly. Audrey's warriors were busy installing restrictions and mobilizing their powers. They scattered around the barrier and waited for Haig. "That brat is a surviving member of the immortal demon clan," said Phelps. His face changed. "No wonder he has such big guts." First, Shi Yang had abducted him and used him to exchange for the 7-colored demonic flower. He had attacked his body and his ego. Then, that brat had ambushed Mia and took advantages from her. Phelps couldn't understand that. Now listening to Mia, he finally knew why. After Haig knew Shi Yang's identity, he became cautious. He didn't hurry to break the barriers but released the soul consciousness. Haig had fused with the origin of the ancient god continent. His soul consciousness was really sharp. Although they were in different territories, he could still sense commotions in the forest when he focused. Of course, it wasn't really clear. His soul consciousness swayed and flickered through the layer of toxic gas. Just like a wisp of smoke, it gently and slowly entered the barrier, falling amidst the gas curtain on the other side. Flows of powerful life energy fluctuations reflected in his brain. Haig's pupils shrank and became more gingerly. All of a sudden, a wisp of cold soul consciousness like a sharp icicle precisely stabbed his soul consciousness. He felt tingly and then numb. His flow of soul consciousness perished. The images of things behind the barrier vanished in his mind. He couldn't sense anything unusual. Jolting up, Haig woke up immediately. A brutal gleam crossed his eyes. He swung his arm and said, "No one is allowed to attack the barrier." His cold shout had frightened most of the members of the God clan. They looked at him inexplicably as they didn't know what had happened. Only Phelps and MIA who had observed him knew what he had just done. He had used his special ability to probe and go behind that barrier. They both fixed their eyes on him. A flow of my soul consciousness had crossed the barrier. They have many members in their troop. They are installing many restrictions right behind the barrier in front of us. Haig said with a heaven face. If we go there, we will bear a significant loss. Listening to him, MIA and Phelps discolored. They then turned around to advise their troopers and asked them to be more cautious. According to you, they aren't weaker than us. At the same time, they are preparing traps awaiting us. If so, will we have a chance? Phelps shook his head. If so, why do we have to idly stay here? MIA also frowned. With our current force, it's not easy to defeat them. Haig pondered for a while and then said, we should find a way to lure them here. Would they dare to come? Phelps didn't know whether he should laugh or cry. The opposite force is really strong. I found a troublesome woman too. Perhaps they dare to mess with us, said Haig. Do you have any good solution? Said MIA. Let me think. Haig narrowed his eyes. He was still very placid. He wouldn't let his greed of Shuyang's origin affect his sound mind. He had stopped his reins right before the cliff to save his force from a big loss. On the other side, under Audrey's orders, Cecilia, Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and the others were in charge of a section. They were using their special powers to strengthen that section while setting up a lot of traps. Many warriors of Audrey's force were busy on the ground, climbing trees, or working in the cracks and canals. They were installing earth-shaking energy traps. As long as Haig's team came, those traps were going to be triggered, which would create an unpredictable, fatal consequence. Of course, Shuyang thought that those restrictions and traps couldn't create the desired result because Haig was like him. He could vaguely feel the commotions on this side. Almost done, Cecilia stopped working and wiped the beads of sweat on her forehead. She giggled while walking towards Shuyang. What do you think? On a high tree, Shuyang looked at the barrier in front of them. He shook his head indifferently, nothing impressive. Mo Fu, Cecilia, Wu Feng, Shong Yingyu, and the others had used their best treasures when they had set up the death trap by the lake. They didn't have a lot of good stuff to use now. Shuyang could tell that the section where Mo Fu and Cecilia in charge of couldn't bring a fatal effect to Haig's team as its power was limited. I also think it's nothing much. Cecilia smiled like a fresh, blooming flower. She said sweetly, I think it's not as lethal as what we had done before. The two of us joined hands and killed 8/3 sky of ethereal God realm warriors. The traps we are installing now are worse. Well, they can scare the others. Shuyang glanced at the barrier. If Haig is as smart like as what people said about him, he won't come. If I were him, I wouldn't take risks to come here. The 12 of them and Audrey's 26 warriors were enough to fight Haig, MIA, and Phelps once. The death trap they had set up by the barrier could trouble Haig. Anyway, if Haig was smart, he wouldn't let his warriors cross the barrier and would tell them to stay put. I also think that Haig won't come. Cecilia smiled, jumping up to Shuyang. She sat down by him on a big tree branch. Her slender thighs dangled mesmerizingly. You used to say that you would help me when we get into the center. Will you keep your word? If the condition is enough to move me, I'll keep my word. Shuyang squinted, his hot eye scanning her voluptuous body. Cecilia's sexy body stiffened for a moment. Her smile looked reluctant on her charming face. Do you really want me that way? Aside from that, you don't want to talk about any other condition? Shi Yang was surprised. He laughed loudly all of a sudden. Oh, will you tell me what you can offer me? The most precious treasures of the ancient continent can be found in the center. However, they will come with deadly dangers. Different from the other 4 territories, the center has death traps everywhere. Once you make a wrong step, you will be consigned to eternal damnation. Cecilia had an earnest face. I know something about the center of the ancient continent. If you agree to help me when the time comes, I will tell you what I know. Shi Yang eyed her and said, we can talk about it later when we get to the center. All right, Cecilia thought for a while. She knew that it was a little early to talk about that now. She smiled and nodded. Why don't you ask Audrey? Honestly, don't you think she can help you better? Asked Shi Yang all of a sudden. Audrey is powerful, indeed. The ancient continent doesn't shackle her, so her soul-detecting skill is really amazing. And she's the princess of the Imperial Dark Tribe, one of the 4 great creatures. Anyway, can't you see that many people are servile to her? Cecilia chuckled and mocked. Ever since they've seen that woman, Mo Fu, Shuo Jiao, Wu Feng, and Jiao Shan all surrounded Audrey. No one has a say on her commanding style. They've forgotten who has brought them to this place alive. Indeed, Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and Shuo Jiao had focused on Audrey after they knew that she wasn't bound by the ancient continent. Gradually, they forgot Shi Yang. Before they had gotten here, Wu Feng, Mo Fu, and Jiao Shan had always surrounded Shi Yang and centered on him. They would ask for his opinion whenever they needed to do anything. However, it was different now. They apparently deemed that Audrey would make a better leader. The reason why they acted that way, besides her origin and her position as the princess of the Imperial Dark Tribe, was because she was really beautiful. It would be hard to not lay their eyes on her. Audrey's glamour was elegant and celestial. Her beautiful, noble makings were like that of a goddess who had lived for a long time in a deep place in heaven. She gave people a feeling that they had to lift their heads up to admire her. She would give people pressure that had suffocated talented gentlemen from different star areas. Thus, if that noble, cold and proud Audrey looked at them more than one time and acknowledged them, she would make them so thrilled. Shi Yang followed Cecilia's line of sight to look at that cold and proud woman. He also couldn't help but appraise the woman. Can't blame them though. That woman has a noble echelon. She's really intimidating and she's the boss here. Of course, she's like a magnet to other people. It's reasonable that they are servile to her. Then why don't you do that? Cecilia eyed him. Me? Shi Yang rubbed his nose and laughed. I also want to do so. But you can see so many people there. I can't sway through that crowd, right? Thus, I should focus on my cultivation, which is better for me. Cecilia's pretty eyes fixed on him. She knew that he was telling lies, but she didn't try to call him out. She just burst out laughing. Hey guys, quiet down. I'm going to talk. At this moment, Audrey, with the protection of the 4 experts of the Imperial Dark Tribe, walked to the center of the place. Her cold eyes raked through the crowd and she said, there are 11 warriors who have just joined us. They are from the swamp area. Through the last 5 years, they also had some harvest. As the others haven't come yet, we still have a little time. If you don't mind, show the others your items and see if you can exchange for something suitable for your cultivation. You should increase your realm and power fast. That's good. We agree. It sounds good. Whether they were from Audrey's team or Wu Feng's team, they nodded in agreement. This group of warriors had spent 5 years in the forest, so they also had some harvest. Just like them, Shuo Jiao, Wu Feng, and the others had struggled for a long time in the swamp to get something precious. They then showed their items and exchanged for the items that were helpful for their power Upanishad and realm. It was a good method to increase their overall competence, indeed. Thus, no one opposed this idea. Chapter 1140, The Scarlet Flaming Heart. Chapter 1140, The Scarlet Flaming Heart. 26 experts of Audrey's team and 12 experts of Mo Fu's team, including Shi Yang as per Audrey's request, gathered and showed each other their harvests. In the shade of a thick-leaved, towering ancient tree, everyone scattered and grouped, showcasing piles of spirit herbs, grass, strange stones, crystals, treasures, and even wooden logs with thick energy fluctuation. Audrey, standing in the protection of the 4 warriors of the Imperial Dark Tribe, was by the ancient tree and watching everybody and the materials they had. She had focused more on the newcomers of Mo Fu's team. The ones who had followed her earlier would have this trading activity periodically. Thus, she knew what they had. She didn't want to pay more attention to them. Shi Yang and Cecilia jumped off their tree and walked to Mo Fu, Shuo Jiao, and Shi Yang to observe a lot of the sparkling materials. It was like a small market. Everybody showed items in a small area. They saw what the others had. If they were interested in something, they would come and negotiate. They could exchange by trading items or divine crystals. Shi Yang and Cecilia approached them. Looking at many rare and strange materials, Shi Yang was amazed. They saw different kinds of crystals, chalcedonies, beautiful grass, flowers, knots of bamboo with the pure aura of wood, rare containers, and more. However, not all of these items came from this ancient continent. Also, there were many items that they had collected and accumulated over many years. Now, they could use these to exchange for items suitable to their realm and powers Upanishads. Just like the others, as she was the originator, she had a lot of materials showcased in front of her. There were 3 plants with crown-like flowers. She also had 3 pieces of jade that emitted lightning energy. Those jades had fine natural textures. Sometimes, they flashed and released the scorching electric beams. Shong Yingyu's bright eyes moved around this group. Her eyes then fixed on the 3 pieces of jades that had lightning energy. Her soft body shivered. She jolted up. Her jade-like hand swung and retrieved the materials she had displayed. Shong Yingyu walked to Audrey without a bit of hesitation. Her eyes were fixed on the 3 jades in front of Audrey. Apparently, those 3 jades were helpful for her. Also, there were items displayed in front of Mo Fu, Shuo Jiao, and Wu Feng. It seemed like they harvested something after 5 years. In everybody's sight, only Shi Yang didn't have anything showcased. It didn't look right. You got nothing after 5 years? Cecilia asked him. She sounded very surprised. Piled up in front of Cecilia were many crystals in different colors. Those crystals had sounds of cracking ice and howling wind with clear energy fluctuations. Besides the crystals, there were many bizarre plants with tentacles that were fluttering with the wind. They looked weird, indeed. I used them all, said Shi Yang indifferently. The time he had spent in the swamp wasn't long. He had absorbed the 100 Kalpa soul thread and the brilliant starfruit tree already. Today, he had only the 7-colored demonic flower and the 7-colored spirit flower in his ring. The 7-colored spirit flower was used to fuse his heaven flames and the 7-colored demonic flower was prepared for Yang Tian Emperor. Thus, it was true that he didn't have anything to exchange. Standing in this area, he looked weird, indeed. Audrey didn't say that everybody had to exchange stuff. She didn't force them, so she didn't say anything even when Shi Yang didn't present anything to swap. Windy ice mystic crystal. A surprised scream came from afar. It was from a ghost mark man of Audrey's team who had many magical tattoos on his face that looked like malicious, frightening cuts. He stayed at his spot and put his materials into the ring. He appeared in front of Cecilia shortly after, his eyes scrutinizing the crystals. Those crystals were white, bright yellow, and purple. They could hear the cracking of ice and the wind howling from those crystals. Some of them even had cracking sounds and were howling at the same time. Shi Yang and Cecilia stood next to each other. They both saw the man coming, so they quietly checked his aura for a while. They were shocked, indeed. This man had only second sky of ethereal god realm, but he had cultivated ice and wind power Upanishads at the same time. The energy fluctuating in his body was really strong. He even had wind withering in his bones while his vessels were as cold as ice. This man wasn't weak and his soul altar was pure. Another fierce fella, Shi Yang assessed. True, They are windy ice mystic crystals. These mystic crystals have two different powers, ice and wind. They strike each other and create a natural magnetic field that keeps the essence of the two powers Upanishad. Cecilia smiled charmingly. It was tough to get these windy ice mystic crystals. I got them from a god warrior, which cost a lot of my efforts. This kind of crystal is very good for warriors who cultivate ice or wind power Upanishad. Anyway, it's the best for warriors who cultivate both the powers at the same time. For example, Your Excellency. Her white fingers fiddled the crystals for a while. The sound of ice cracking and the wind howling became louder. Some white crystals looked like they were about to explode. That man's eyes looked so hot. He took a deep breath and asked frankly, as he didn't want to conceal his desires or beat around the bushes. I'm Riello. I want those windy ice mystic crystals. What do you need? Splash. Splash. Cecilia extended her arms. A narrow water current arose. As she was moving her arms, it changed into different shapes, including a bridge, water monsters, and a water curtain. This happened as much as she pleased. At first glance, Riello knew Cecilia cultivated water power Upanishad. He knew what she wanted. However, he frowned and said reluctantly, I don't have any material suitable for you. Oh, so I'm sorry. Cecilia parted her lips to smile, her hands covering the windy ice mystic crystal as she shook her head. Surprisingly, Riello didn't look disappointed. Riello's eyes fixed on Yang, asking, Is he your man? My man. Cecilia was surprised. She giggled and covered her mouth attractively. Oh, sure. What about it? Yang was astounded. Frowning, he looked at Riello, thinking whether this man had his eyes placed correctly on his face. What kind of look was that? However, what Cecilia said and the strange feeling in her eyes had sent a vibe to him. I got something suitable for him. Riello's face was serious when a dark green ring on his finger glowed. A scarlet stone emerged, which had a heart shape and special carvings of a sealing charm on the surface to cover the energy fluctuation of the stone. At first glance, it wasn't anything special. This trashy stone? Cecilia shook her head as she laughed. Nothing special, eh? Riello didn't look at her. His eyes were studying Yang as he spoke in a low-pitched tone. What do you think? Yang's eyes had a beam of divine light he couldn't hide. He gazed at the heart-shaped scarlet stone. Taking a deep breath, he said abruptly, Cecilia, take this stone for me. I agree with what you requested me. Cecilia was puzzled. Dude, you have keen eyes. Riello appraised. Since you've cultivated star power Upanishad, this scarlet flaming heart suits you the most. The scarlet flaming heart comes from scarlet flaming star. It's a solar star in the sea of stars. This scarlet flaming heart is the core of that solar star. Here are your windy ice mystic crystals. Cecilia was bewildered for a while before she could react. She said determinedly, I'll give you the windy ice mystic crystals and then you'll give him the scarlet flaming heart, okay? The scarlet flaming heart is much more valuable than those windy ice mystic crystals. Besides the crystals, give me those things too. Riello pointed at the peculiar plants. Cecilia winced in pain as she nodded, take them. Riello smiled and handed Yang the sealed stone. He asked, do you need a hand to unseal it? No, thanks. I'll do it myself. Yang received the scarlet flaming heart. He put it in his fantasy sky ring and turned to nod at Cecilia. You take them all. Cecilia opened her arms. The windy ice mystic crystals and the plants flew up, falling to Riello. The man then put them into his ring. I wish you guys will be happy together. Riello smiled and stroked his fantasy sky ring contentedly before leaving. Evidently, he was in a good mood. Yang also touched his fantasy sky ring, his face smiling in satisfaction. He talked to Cecilia, who was a little agitated. I agree with you. When we get to the center, if you need my help, I won't ignore you. Is that scarlet flaming heart good for you? Cecilia calmed down as she asked for information. I've cultivated star power Upanishad. To me, the sun, moon, and stars are objects I need to study and comprehend. My ethereal extents need the nucleus of the solar star, the moon star, and the stars, of course. The nuclei are the things I want the most, explained Shi Yang as he felt so pleased. This vast universe had many solar stars and moon stars. And among those solar stars, the scarlet flaming star was a famous one. From Shong Chen's book, Shi Yang knew that the scarlet flaming heart was one of the broken pieces of the scarlet flaming star's nucleus. It was the top treasure for warriors who cultivated the extreme yang power or star power. It could improve and increase the god power of those warriors. Also, it could facilitate the warriors cultivating fire power Upanishad. More importantly, it gave sunlight and warmth to the ethereal extent of warriors cultivating star power Upanishad. After Shi Yang had comprehended the essence of star power Upanishad and the brilliant star fruit tree, he had reached second sky of ethereal god realm. However, his ethereal extent didn't have any significant change. Ethereal extent was the key point to break through to the incipient god realm. When the ethereal extent had been developed to the incipient extent, it was a challenge to break through to incipient god realm. Shi Yang had studied and vaguely found a new direction. His ethereal extent that looked like a vast sea of stars, when it could have the marvelous wonders of the real cosmos, perhaps, he could make it an incipient extent then. The scarlet flaming heart of scarlet flaming star was a precious material that would boost his ethereal extent. It would lend a big hand to his progress of creating the incipient extent in the future. More importantly, it could give his star power Upanishad the power of the sun. Chapter 1141, Refine the Ethereal Extent. Chapter 1141, Refine the Ethereal Extent. Finally, Cecilia and Shi Yang had an agreement. Stroking the fantasy sky ring, Shi Yang's face was filled with satisfaction. He suddenly found that he had collected a lot of rare treasures on this ancient continent. Now, he was eager to see what was awaiting him. Being one of the 5 ancient continents, Desolate wasn't similar to the other 4. It didn't give birth to any creature, but it contained a lot of earth and heaven natural products. It would open every 10,000 years. No one knew if this planet had full consciousness. Thinking about the possibility that the ground under his feet was a special living being, Shi Yang felt his hair rise on his nape. It felt like there was a pair of eyes observing everybody every minute. Each warrior placing his feet on this continent couldn't dodge its observation. At the same time, they would never know what the planet had in its mind or what it thought. No doubt it was really annoying. You guys, traded with other people? While Shi Yang fell into his thought, Shong Yingyu came, her face hanging a satisfied smile. She was in a good mood, indeed. Shi Yang was bewildered for a while. He couldn't help but look at Audrey over Shong Yingyu's shoulder. He saw that the woman was still coldly and proudly sitting quietly. The other 4 warriors of the Imperial Dark Tribe were surrounding and protecting her. Their faces scared off people. In fact, she's nice. Shong Yingyu thought for a while and then talked in her cold but clear voice. It's not hard to talk to her. She's fair and reasonable. She's not as haughty and tyrannical as we thought. The transaction between Shong Yingyu and Audrey was likely delightful. Since they had arrived her, Shong Yingyu didn't like Audrey and now, she was saying good things about Audrey. It surprised Cecilia a lot. She then looked at Shong Yingyu with a little bit of hardness. When I came here, she told me that Haig didn't dare to come. She said we could go around freely but shouldn't go too far away. We don't want to see troubles. She asked me to tell you that you shouldn't consume your energy too much. Shong Yingyu looked at Shi Yang. Why does she care about Shi Yang a lot? Cecilia had many thoughts in her mind. Does she want to break the barrier? Haig's force is on the other side of the barrier and they are really strong. We should be thankful that they didn't come to us. I hope she won't do anything stupid. Harumph. However, at this moment, Audrey's cold voice arose. Her cold eyes gazing at Cecilia had chilled the woman and made her change her face. Audrey's realm was profound and the Imperial Dark Tribe was famous for their attainment in cultivating the soul altar in the whole cosmos. Her sensibility was super strong. Thus, even if she didn't want to eavesdrop, something could still come into her ears. Cough. Cough. I think we should cultivate for a while. Haig's troop hasn't come yet. We still have time, right? Cecilia jolted up reluctantly, looking at Shi Yang and then at Shang Yingyu. She suggested, the three of us should team up. Some people had completed their transactions. Some still stayed, but some had already left quietly. They would group up. In any circumstance, they would never go alone. Apparently, they wanted to use the materials they've just got to cultivate and increase their realm and power, especially their fighting competence. It wasn't their home here, so everybody had to be very careful. They had to stay alert of ambush. To ensure safety, they could find a partner to watch out for each other. It was the safest way to cultivate here. People left in pairs or more than two and scattered. Should we leave out of the range of 100 miles? Audrey's voice arose all of a sudden. What do you think? Cecilia looked at Shang Yingyu and Shi Yang. I'm cool with that, Shang Yingyu nodded. It's necessary to watch out for each other. I can ease my mind if I go with you guys. I agree. She looked at Shi Yang. As she had just sealed her deal with Shi Yang and she needed his favor, Shi Yang assumed that Cecilia wouldn't harm him. At the same time, Shang Yingyu was Shang Chen's daughter. Spending time with her for a while, Shi Yang knew that this woman looked cold, but she actually had a warm heart. It was worth being friends with her. Compared to Mo Fu, Shuo Jiao, and Wu Feng, who were cunning bastards, Cecilia and Shang Yingyu were much safer choices. If he cooperated with them, everybody could feel safe. Okay, let's do that. Shi Yang stood up, smiling and walking away. Mo Fu, Wu Feng, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai saw him leaving. They thought and then clamored as they wanted to pair with him to cultivate. They knew Shi Yang could see the commotions around. As they needed a secluding place to cultivate, they remembered Shi Yang's ability. Unfortunately, Cecilia and Shang Yingyu had grouped up with Shi Yang one step ahead of them. Seeing the man leaving with the two women, they all had confused looks. Audrey also looked at Shi Yang's group of three. Her long eyelashes twitched and gave an unrecognizable frown. Shi Yang's group of three left the horde of people and slowly speeded. Shi Yang guided them and dashed away, going into a deep area where big trees towered and shaded the whole sky. They stopped by a grand mountain. The flank of this mountain was filled with many jet-black caves where the wind howled and whistled fiercely. It seemed like this mountain was strangely hollow. Shi Yang took in the picture. He frowned and then said, "Someone is in there. We need to find another place. Follow me." 10 minutes later, they appeared by a big, crystal-clear lake surrounded by big ancient trees. Under the bright light from the stars, this lake looked like a fulgent mirror without a single ripple. The fresh steam hovered and sent them a refreshing feeling. The pretty eyes of Cecilia and Shang Yingyu twinkled. They both saw joy in each other's eyes. The women hesitated for a while before starting to cheer. "Shi Yang, we want to take a bath in this lake for a while. You watch out for us first. After we're done, we'll guard you." Cecilia turned her head and smiled charmingly. She couldn't conceal the joy on her face. All women loved to stay clean and hygienic. As they'd went through the swamp and many other things, they had a lot of dirt and stains on their bodies. Seeing that beautiful lake, they, of course, wished to enjoy it. "Okay, enjoy. I'll stay close by to watch over you guys. I will stop anyone who comes near." Shi Yang nodded, perching on a branch of a big tree and backing from the lake as if he wouldn't sneak on them. "It's okay. I'm not afraid that you would sneak on us. Haha, you've seen a lot of mine, anyway." Cecilia smiled charmingly. She jumped into the lake, swimming and drifting around like a mermaid. She looked really joyful. She was swimming in the lake, but she didn't use the light curtain to cover herself. Thus, she got wet immediately. The clear lake made her porcelain body visible even from underwater, which was mesmerizingly creamy and shiny. Shang Yingyu was a little hesitant. She glanced at Shi Yang. Eventually, she couldn't endure the enticement of the lake. Just like a blue bolt of lightning, she shot into the lake and tried to stay away from Cecilia and further away from Shi Yang. She immersed in the lake. While watching Shi Yang, she took off her clothes gingerly. She was afraid that Shi Yang would turn around to peep on her. Shang Yingyu and Cecilia enjoyed the coolness and rare. It was refreshing and they were joyous from the lake. They played with water, splashing and bathing their bright-skinned bodies. Shi Yang stood neatly in the thick woods. Hesitating, he released the co-soul to check around to make sure that no one came near. Then, he took out the scarlet flaming heart he had just got. The scarlet flaming heart was slightly bigger than his fist. It was as garnet as the red iron. However, it felt natural in his hand without fierce energy fluctuations. At first glance, it was dull and nothing special. Of course, Shi Yang knew its real face wasn't that. Sizzle. Sizzle. Space power was sent to his fingertip. A space blade slowly emerged. When he flickered his finger, the seal covering the scarlet flaming heart was torn off as if it was made of fabric. As the seal was broken in the corner, a flow of flaming energy rolled out massively. Shortly after, the seal was burned down. A warm, beautifully red stone appeared in the palm of his hand. It had a powerful flaming aura of the sun. It felt like he was holding a sun in his hand. His hand started to smoke. Even his tenacious god body couldn't stand its heat. His palm was burned and it was smoking. His thoughts flickered in pain. He immediately urged the soul altar to use star power. Countless dots of starlight twinkled, covering the scarlet flaming heart instantaneously. The fiery aura that could burn Shi Yang's god body was covered by the starlight shortly after. A hot aura immediately emitted, mingling with the star power Upanishad in his soul altar. It also had a subtle, marvelous connection with the star in his ethereal extent. Shi Yang smiled suddenly. He quietly grabbed the scarlet flaming heart and squeezed. The scarlet flaming heart disappeared abruptly and left no beam of aura. Inside the ethereal extent, the scarlet flaming heart that was as vast as the galaxy reappeared. It was now a sun releasing light and heat in his ethereal extent, bringing warmth to his freezing cold ethereal extent. It also sublimated his soul. The scarlet flaming heart wasn't really precious to Cecilia and Riello, but it was very valuable to Shi Yang. When the scarlet flaming heart had entered his ethereal extent, his soul altar also changed. A gold light curtain of the sun was now covering his soul altar and deepening his knowledge of star power Upanishad. Shi Yang quieted down his mind to comprehend and cultivate. A hidden aura was suddenly reflected in his mind. Shi Yang, who was happily studying the essence of the ethereal extent, had to wake up and he frowned. The co-soul danced away from his pupil. Shi Yang used the co-soul to sense for a while, retrieved it, and then got up. He glided like a ghost with a dark face to a corner of the lake. He detected someone sneaking up on him and coming near. That person had a clear purpose. He wanted to get into the lake and peep on Cecilia and Shang Yingyu. He possibly wanted to do something ambiguous. Chapter 1142, Little Fatty. Chapter 1142, Little Fatty. By the clear lake on a steep grassy slope lay a white, fat body. He fixed his eyes on the figures in the lake. It was a young, fat man who had his upper body exposed and was wearing a pair of snakeskin shorts. His small eyes squinted as he drooled and parted his lips. From this angle, the graceful body of Cecilia and Shang Yingyu in the lake were barely discernible. He couldn't see clearly. Moreover, it wasn't practical because the two women hadn't taken off all of their clothes. However, this fat white boy was so excited. A starlight quietly arrived and hovered by a big tree behind that little fatty. Shi Yang was surprised. At first glance, he was sure that he had never seen this little fatty in Audrey's group. He couldn't help but knit his brows. According to Audrey, she had killed all the god warriors in this forest territory and the survivors were with her, following her commands. So, where the heck did this little fatty came from? At first glance, this half-naked little fatty was a human. His features matched some unique features of human beings. However, Shi Yang felt something unusual. That little fatty gave him a strange feeling, a fear of danger that wouldn't be easy to deal with. Beautiful, eh? Pondering for a while, he lowered his voice and asked. The little fatty nodded instinctively. Yeah, so beautiful. Oops. He bolted up, turning to Shi Yang and asking nervously, Who are you? Why are you here? The little boy didn't wait for Shi Yang to answer. He gave a dirty smile as if he had suddenly recognized something. You're here to peep too, aren't you? Come here, come here. My spot isn't as bad as it seems. Those two women look really nice. Hey, take a look. Who is more beautiful, you say? I like the plump one. She looks so sexy and strong. Little Fatty lowered his voice and beamed despicably. He waved at Shi Yang while still commenting. He seemed to not be wary of Shi Yang, as if he wasn't worried that Shi Yang would try his best to kill him. Shi Yang wondered if this boy was bold or just naive. He looked like he didn't care about the imminent fatal peril. I like both of them. Eyeing the fatty boy, Shi Yang wore a calm and cool face. He deliberately walked to the boy and said, I have never seen you before. You've just arrived here? Yep, I've just arrived here from another place. The little fatty smiled until his eyes narrowed. He swayed his fat body to make room for Shi Yang. I came from the sea territory. That mad dog Harson has gazed at me and bit me for a long time. I had to play dead to dodge a kalpa. I have a good skill of playing dead, which should rank first. Haha, Harson thought he had killed me. He was too naive, right? Shi Yang listened to the boy babbling, his eyes showing a gleam of surprise. He had heard of the name Harson before. He was another outstanding warrior of the God clan who ranked right behind Haig. He was a madman who loved bloody slaughters. He was in charge of the sea territory among the 4 territories. That man was tough, indeed. If this fat boy could escape from Harson's hands and he could get through the barrier to enter this place, he wasn't a simple warrior. If he weren't strong enough or didn't have many tricks, he could never do what he had mentioned. Thoughts crossed his head. Shi Yang told him all of a sudden, no more peeping. Why? Do you want to enjoy alone? Hey, you are too tyrannical, you know that. Little Fatty hissed, his face angry. When I saw you coming, I've talked to you and proactively made you room. Enjoying this alone isn't as much fun as sharing it with someone else. Do you know that? They are under my... Shi Yang wanted to say that he was in charge of protecting them. They are yours. Little Fatty misunderstood. He intervened and said in awe, Dag, you're really strong. Then, he turned around and behaved. He stopped gazing at Cecilia and Shong Yingyu anymore. He friendly patted Shi Yang's shoulder and smiled embarrassedly. I'm so sorry. I didn't know that they are your women. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done that. Pausing for a while, he asked, Did you kill Yu Jia? You are in charge of this forest now, right? Shi Yang was surprised. He looked at the boy, his face puzzled. You've fused with the origin, so the ancient continent doesn't bind you. And you can gather earth and heaven energy. Seeing that you're alive now, Yu Jia should be dead by now, I suppose. Shi Yang slightly paled. How do you know that I'm not bound by the ancient continent? He became more curious about this little fatty. This boy could escape Harson and come here through the barrier. He just needed to look at Shi Yang and he could know Shi Yang's secrets. Who was this boy? If you couldn't see the situation around clearly, you couldn't find me or approach me that fast. The fat boy sounded casual, but he had gotten right to the point. Okay, tell me the situation in this place, please. Is there any possible danger? If yes, I should leave early. I should get back to Harson's side. He doesn't have the origin. I can find a random islet to hide. He can never track me down. Audrey is in charge here. She's the princess of the Imperial Dark Tribe. She has fused with the origin too. Contemplating for a while, Shi Yang told him frankly. Oh, ha. Little Fatty was surprised. He nodded right after that. Yeah, right. The Imperial Dark Tribe must send someone anyway. Desolate is one of the 5 ancient continents and it's the most marvelous one. They've been subtle for so many years. It's time to step out and raise the storm though. Pausing for a while, Little Fatty squinted his eyes as he shouted, Dag, are you from the Heavenly Monster Tribe or the Immortal Demon Clan? Shi Yang was shocked. He looked at the boy in fright and confusion. Don't wear that face, Little Fatty laughed cheerily. I guess that you're from the Immortal Demon Clan because I can't sense the aura of my kind on you. Shi Yang was baffled as he looked at the boy. Who are you? Only the descendants of the great four creatures can fuse with the origin. As far as I've known, Haig has fused with the origin of ancient God continent, Audrey fused with the origin of God-blessed mainland, and you, apparently, you fused with the origin of Grace mainland. Haha, you gave me a close feeling of nostalgia. You're from my ancestral planet. The fat boy patted his shoulder. He wasn't afraid of Shi Yang or worried that he would attack him suddenly. You're a member of the heavenly monster tribe? Shi Yang was bewildered for a while before he could figure it out. Grace mainland was the ancestral star of the heavenly monster tribe. It was the cradle of these kinds of immemorial creatures. They were one of the great four creatures. Shi Yang had the origin of Grace mainland. If this fat boy was correct that only the members of the four creatures could get the origin, he could confirm Shi Yang's immortal demon origin in just a blink. As you're from the immortal demon clan and I'm from the heavenly monster tribe, I'm sure you won't harm me. Little Fatty smiled until his eyes narrowed. Interesting. You're an immortal demon warrior, but you have the origin of my ancestral planet. And as for me, I'm from the heavenly monster tribe, but I have the origin of your ancestral land. It's strangely coincidental, don't you think? You fused with the origin of ancient demon continent. Shi Yang was astounded. Little Fatty smiled and nodded. He didn't seem to attempt to conceal things. Should we exchange information? You'll tell me the stuff in Grace mainland and I'll give you the information about ancient demon continent. Okay. Shi Yang took a deep breath and then bellowed. His face was stern. Splash, splash. The sounds of bodies moving in the water arose. Cecilia's gentle voice came to them. Shi Yang, are you talking to someone? His bellowing had alerted Cecilia and Shang Yingyu. They were startled and they hurried to change into their clothes. They flew from the lake and glided towards them. Their cold eyes gazed at Little Fatty and then at Shi Yang. Is this how you watch out for us? Said Shang Yingyu coldly. I got lost. The Little Fatty put on an innocent, puppy-like face and looked at Shang Yingyu and Cecilia. I walked on a straight road to this area. I didn't see anything. Hey! Shi Yang, right? He stopped me before I'd reached the lake. So, I didn't see anything. Little Fatty opened his arms. Fat rolls on his face pushed each other and gave him a funny look. Gosh, who are you? Cecilia reacted and shouted hoarsely, you're not from Audrey's team. Who are you after all? As she shouted, Shang Yingyu woke up, her face cold and strict. Shi Yang, who is this man? He's not from this territory, right? No. He has escaped Harsen's grasp and gotten here. Shi Yang explained. Pondering for a while, he told Cecilia and Shang Yingyu. I want to talk to him alone. If you don't mind, please stay away for a while. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu exchanged looks and then nodded to Shi Yang. All right, we'll stay away. We will make sure that no one will disturb you. Cecilia answered him, throwing Shang Yingyu a glance. Then, they left together. After the two of them had walked away from Shi Yang's, Shang Yingyu said, I'm sure that fat boy had sneaked on us. Cecilia giggled. She seemed to not mind. It's far. Even if he wanted to peep, he couldn't see anything. Don't keep it in your mind. Pausing for a while, Cecilia became stern. That fat boy isn't simple since he got here through the barrier. He's absolutely not easy to deal with. Harsen, you know how brutal he is. If this boy can escape from Harsen, he's dangerous, indeed. I understand. This man should be an extremely dangerous one. Shang Yingyu wore a cold face. I don't know what they would discuss. I think they have something they want to hide from us. Would it be related to us? If that fat boy and Shi Yang go with each other, perhaps Audrey can't do anything to them. Of course, with the premise that they want to challenge Audrey. Cecilia's beautiful eyes twinkled. She was calculating something, which made her excited. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.